Okay, we're ready, everybody. Sorry for the delay there. Crazy day. Lori Lightfoot was in the Sun Times studio today.
Yes, she was in the Sun Times building.
Well, the building, studio, whatever. Did you happen to see her?
No, I was coming in. She was going out. That's how it goes. I was taking the stairs. She took the elevator.
By the way, everybody, check it out. Ben's popping his collar today. That's awesome.
Oh, why? I didn't notice. I'm glad you did.
Too late now. All right.
I'm going to fix it.
Okay. Oh, he just fixed it now. Let's get a little. Ooh, look at that. Oh, all right. Your Ben Joravsky show for Friday, August 30th is just moments away. But before we get into that, we need to thank the following unions for jumping on board and bringing back our program. First up, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. A giant thank you to those unions for jumping on board. And, of course, today's show is brought to you by our dear friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Oh, I got to make sure I'm recording. Hang tight, everybody. Okay, let me check, make sure. Right. The Ben Joravsky Show starts right now. One more time. What's going on here? Okay. It's going to be one of those days. Starts right now. There we go. It is Friday, August 30th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, it's another Rummana Rundown with Sun-Times editor Rummana Hussain. President/CEO of Personal Pack Terry Cosgrove returns. And it's all-star Chicago political strategist Delmarie Cobb. And now your host, all-star sleeper, Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Kick the Ball Friday. And here's why. Lots of kicking going around town these last few days, D. Starting with the Chicago Bears. Now, I know what you're going to say, Dennis. He always gets mad at me when I'm a little upset. Ben, don't talk sports.
No, what I was going to say is you can consult me before the show and I can get you a drum roll. You don't have to do it yourself.
I kind of like my drum roll.
Oh, okay.
Here we go. Listen, watch. The Chicago Bears. Why do I say the Chicago Bears? All right, I'll get to politics. Just bear with me. No pun intended. Just bear with me as I relate one to the other. And I will do it very skillfully, very nimbly. All right. As sports fans know, the Chicago Bears have had a crisis of kicking ever since last year's playoff when a guy named Cody Parkey, forget the name, it doesn't matter anymore, non-sports fans, had a pivotal moment to kick a field goal that would have propelled the Bears to the next round of the playoffs, and instead, that's the sound. Everybody goes doink, doink, but I like the sound of the ball hitting the pole, and he missed the field goal. The Bears lost. Bears fans everywhere just plunged into an existential crisis. Oh, woe is us. Our team can never win because we don't have a kicker. And so for the last, 9 months, Bears have been trying everybody out for kicking. In fact, I think Dr. D one day went out, hey, here's my football. Bang.
I'm not that good.
He's not that good, but he did okay. Anyway, the Bears have been trying this kicker and that kicker. Last night, Eddie Pinero it's down to him. He's the last one. He had, in the last preseason game, he had 4 kicks, went 3 for 4, made 3 field goals, but missed an extra point, plunging sports writers into more gloom and doom. Today's papers are filled with articles by sports writers going, oh my God, what are we going to do? Sports writers love it at moments like this, D, because they get gloomy and doomy, and it's like, fans just drink it up. Gloom,
as a writer,
doom.
you know nothing about gloom and doom.
No, that's... I know nothing about it. I never play that game, not me. Just the sports writers. Anyway. So Bears fans are wondering, can Eddie Pinero do it? Do we have to go to the waivers to get a new kicker? Who could be kicking for the Bears? We need a kicker. We can't go into the season. The season starts on Thursday against the Packers on Thursday night. It'll be the whole country will be watching. Who will be kicking for us? Well, I have a suggestion. based on another great kicking performance last night. Hey, Bears, you want to be really super cool? You want to get yourself a great kicker? You want someone with a powerful leg? I have a suggestion. Her name is Lori Lightfoot. Oh, yes, that Lori Lightfoot, mayor of the city of Chicago. The mayor who was in the Chicago Sun-Times building today. She was going out as I was coming in. I missed her. She did not make it all the way back to the washrooms and the exit where our beloved little studio is, but she was here getting grilled by the editorial board. Tommy McNamee was really grilling her today.
It's just so funny. We're all the way in the back by the bathrooms.
Yeah, this is like when really important people come to the Sun-Times. They're not taking them to ours. You don't want to go down that hallway.
I like it. It's our charm.
I like our little hall. We got a piano. Hey, they don't have a piano in the editorial board where they, did they have a piano where Lori Lightfoot was grilled by Tommy McNamee? No. All right, so we have a piano. Anyway. So Lori Lightfoot, back to Lori Lightfoot and her kicking. Here's the deal, folks. Last night was the night when she made her great budget speech. I mean, not a budget speech. State of the city speech. I mean, not a state of the city speech. Was it the first 100 days speech? Whatever the speech was. She kept changing the name of it. I can't keep up with all these changes of the name. Anyway, she had the great speech, which lasted for an hour. Wait, it wasn't an hour. It was 10 minutes. Wait, it wasn't 10 minutes. It was 23 minutes. They kept changing the length of the speech. You notice that, D? Anyway. All summer long, Lori led us to believe that yesterday night was the night when she would unveil all the secrets of how to solve all our many problems, our financial problems as a city. Which taxes would she raise? Which fees would she raise? Which fines would she raise? What would she come up with to magically make all our fiscal obligations disappear just like that? That's the drum roll. We all awaited. The entire city awaited. Well, not everybody. Some people were watching Crooklyn at the time of the speech, but forget that for a moment. Most of the city was packed into the Harold Washington Library waiting to see what would Lori Lightfoot say. Well, not most of the city was packed in the library. Most of the movers and shakers of the city. Boom. That's the sound of Lori Lightfoot punting the ball. Yeah, I don't blame her. She was like, oh, I don't know what to do. Anything I do, someone's going to get mad at me. You know, if I raise money, property taxpayers will get mad at me. If I raise fees on rich people will get mad at me. If I raise money on rich people and then spend the money on pension obligations and other pressing matters, the progressives, like that guy Ben, will get mad at me. I can't raid the TIF money because that's sacrosanct. That's my little play money. So I don't know what I'm going to do. I know what I'll do. Boom, I'll punt the ball. The big moment of the speech came when she just said, there'll be another speech. How about that, D? We waited all summer to hear this speech, and then last night she announced there'll be another speech. We get to wait all the way to October for that speech. I know she's going to kick a field goal in that speech, D. She's not going to punt, all right? But this means that she's got another, what? Help me with the math, D. Today's late August. October, she makes that speech. 2 months. She has 2 months to prepare what taxes, what fines, what fees she's going to come up with to meet all our pressing obligations. She's going to have to come up with some, folks. And there's going to be budget hearings, and you're going to get an opportunity to make your opinions known, and the various columnists and pundits of the city will weigh in, and the aldermen will weigh in, and she'll figure something out, maybe. I can't believe she's going to punt again in October, because sooner or later you got to pass some kind of budget. But for the moment, I'll say this. Hey, Bears, you looking for a kicker? Give Lori Lightfoot a tryout. We got a great show today, everybody. Rummana Hussain, yes, that Rummana Hussain will be here in the studio at 1:30. Rummana Rundown every Friday in the Ben Joravsky Show. I know she has a lot to say about Lori's speech and some recommendations. And I'm going to say a few things about Crooklyn, okay, D? One of my favorite movies of all time, which I saw last night.
Well, I thought you saw Police Academy last night, because, boy, those sound effects, you're like that one cop.
So Rummana will be here at TC, Terry Cosgrove, Personal Pac-Man. We are going to pick apart. We're going to take a little break from the Lori Lightfoot budget discussion, folks, to talk about the utter fraud and hypocrisy of Republicans and how, I hate to say it, what suckers and saps the do-gooders good government crew is when it comes to the fair map thing. We'll get to the bottom of all the legislative redistricting that goes on with TC, Terry Cosgrove, the Pride and Joy Personal Pac. And then at 2:30, we're bringing on the great Delmarie Cobb. No one knows politics in Chicago more than Delmarie Cobb, political strategist. She's been around almost as long as I have, D, which is a very long time. And so that is a powerful lineup that I have to say, very few shows got a power lineup. Terry Cosgrove, Delmarie Cobb, D. They don't get smarter about politics than those two. So plenty of political. You know what? I may throw Delmarie Cobb a national political question or two. Has she decided who she's going to support? Or is she like me, a flag in the wind? One day I'm feeling Kamala. Next day it's Bernie. Lately, since Brendan Johnson was on the show, I'm kind of feeling that Elizabeth Warren thing going, huh? One thing I'm not feeling, Pete Buttigieg, that's for sure. Anyway, I may ask her a Pete Buttigieg question or two. But anyway, lots of political talk ahead. But before we get to any of that, the man, the myth, the legend, who has been here since 7 in the morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give him a huge round of applause. The doctor, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. And if you don't hear the end of the show, you know what they call him back in Alton, Illinois, ladies and gentlemen? They call him White Lightning. White Lightning got up this morning at like 4 or something.
5:30.
5:30, man. You know what I was doing at 5:30? Rolling over.
There we go. I was hoping we get one more sound effect out of you.
But he was here at 7 in the morning cutting up this stuff. Man, hey, give him a raise, take it out of petty cash. The doctor with the news.
All right. That was one hell of an intro, Ben.
Well, you know what they call you back home in Alton, though, don't you?
They call me Dennis.
White Lightning.
Okay, let's unpack that speech from Lori Lightfoot last night.
We have some hard choices to make.
We have some hard choices to make,
yeah,
all
but
right?
We're not going to make them tonight, that's for sure, because boom, punt. Sorry.
All right, I have several clips from last night's speech. Ben, you watched it. Your overall thoughts?
Punt. That's my overall thought. It was a moment where Lori Lightfoot, she just said, I don't know what I'm going to do. So what I'm going to do is hold off a major decision, and that's. But I give her. You know what? I'm going to give her credit for one thing, D. She resisted the temptation, as the other guy, I can't remember his name now, who used to be our mayor. She resisted the temptation to go overboard blaming her predecessor. So I'll give her credit for that.
All right. Well, we got some clips here, and we'll begin with the beginning of the speech. And hey, Lori, let it be known that last night was not a budget speech.
Tonight is not a budget speech where I would lay out in detail every expense and every source of revenue. That will come in October. Instead, tonight is an opportunity where we are to explain where we are today with a budget gap for next year, the steps we have taken to close that gap to date, and ask for your help. We need to come together and find solutions to the tough problems that we face, and we need to do that now.
Yeah, let's just follow the bouncing ball. At one point, the budget deficit was estimated. By the way, this is just the city budget, I should add. It doesn't include the school budget, which is $7.7 billion or something. I think that's what the school budget is. So just so you know, folks, this is just one aspect of the budget. It's the city budget. And it doesn't include the TIF program, which is about $800 and something million a year. So just keep in mind, this is just one aspect. Anyway, so the budget deficit has been going up and down. At one point, it was like $500 million. Then Mayor Rahm said it was $700 million. And then Lori Lightfoot's people estimated it was $1 billion. And then last night, she came up with a number of $838 million. And she said it's down from $1 billion because of all the great fiduciary wheeling and dealing they did, which they may have done. Who knows? I remember Mayor Rahm would magically make millions of dollars of deficit just disappear thanks to his budget genius. And I remember Mayor Daley did the same thing, too. Isn't it funny, D? Every new mayor comes in as a fiduciary wizard. I just moved this here and moved that there, and $100 million's gone. Nobody really knows, D. You know what I'm saying? Nobody really knows what the numbers are. Anyway, so they've settled on $838 million with an M.
So not a budget speech, all right? That's in October. Get it right. Now, she let it be known that they did walk into a deficit. Now, this is the time where they kind of she threw some jabs to the previous mayors.
A few jabs.
We walked into a staggeringly large deficit for next year. And what was worse, we were not left with any credible plan on how to fix this massive problem. If we followed the old playbook, we could have tried to muscle through another historically large property tax increase, relied on a massive borrowing scheme, shortchanged pensions, or some measure of all of the above. I fundamentally rejected all of those approaches.
I got news for you. Before all's said and done, one or all of those approaches will be used. Guarantee. It'll be borrowing money. They'll be punting on pensions. And what was the third one? Raising property taxes. Probably already raised property taxes in your school. Don't forget there's the school budget. But whatever. And like I said, she didn't mention Rahm. She didn't spend too much time trashing him. But she did stick that little dig in there about, the old days, they did it XYZ, but we have a new day. Rahm was always talking about a new day, too. Isn't that interesting? We always have these new days in Chicago with budgets, and yet there always seems like the same old day. Anyway.
So she didn't use the previous mayor's strategies. So what they did instead?
So what we did instead was rolled up our sleeves and got to work to address this fiscal crisis. We focused on creating a foundational shift in the way that the city not only balances its budget, but also in the way in which we looked to the future. First, by in the short term, creating structural efficiencies in the way we spend your tax dollars, laying the foundation for a strategy that shifts the focus to investing in our people, our neighborhoods, and not just in our central business district. We are working to create a real growth strategy that deals everyone in, regardless of neighborhood or zip code.
All right. Some words. That's what I'm saying. A little fuzziness there. Structural efficiencies. That's, again, Mayor Rahm would do the same thing. Mayor Daley would do the same thing. They would pretend as though like they had the best accountants in the world. Their accountants were better than the other accountants. And somehow or other they were figuring out which way to invest the money or handle the money. And we were saving money. And so you could bring down the deficit. Or if necessary, you could then redo it and go, uh-oh, it's higher than we expected. So it's, I'm not quite sure really what's going on. Things are moving really fast, but rest assured, our accountants are better than their accountants.
But in just over 100 days...
In just over 100 days, we have not solved every problem, but we have laid a foundation on which we can build a better, fairer, and more prosperous Chicago for all. And let me share some of the things we have done so far. I vowed to you during the campaign that I would be a better fiduciary of your tax dollars, and we are well on our way. First, we started the process of bringing integrity back to government. You know that on my first day in office, I signed an executive order ending the practice known as aldermanic prerogative. Next, we passed one of the most comprehensive ethics reform packages in recent memory. These included placing restrictions on outside employment, expanding oversight to ensure every elected official plays by the same rules, increasing fines for ethics violations, and limiting the influence of lobbyists in City Hall. How does government reform and integrity relate to city finances? Well, if you don't have a government that you trust, one that has legitimacy, we cannot move forward together, making the tough but necessary decisions that will transform our future. A government that you can trust because we operate transparently is a core tenet of our democracy. These reforms that we have made are a critical component of showing you, not just saying it, but showing you, we heard you, and we will be better fiscal stewards of your hard-earned tax dollars.
All right, I agree with her in the most general principle. I agree with her that well, first of all, let me start by this. There is no direct connection between aldermanic prerogative and the city's fiscal problems. None. However, there is the notion that if Chicago's government is corrupt, if Chicago's government is all a bunch of behind the scenes wheeling and dealing, and which is sort of covered over with lies that our officials put out, which is essentially what Chicago government has been for the last, 20, 30 years, ever since Harold Washington died. If we believe that, then you can't believe they're going to fairly and wisely and astutely spend the tax dollars we send them. So I do agree with her on that basic point, D. However, aldermanic prerogative, I've been saying this from the get-go, is a scapegoat created by Lori and her aides and basically the good government community of the city of Chicago to knock down in order to have an easy target. So it has nothing to do directly with the city's budget problems. Most of those aldermen, okay, the notion of alderman and prerogative is that aldermen have too much power. I got news for you folks. Most of the aldermen were like Republican congressmen in Washington. They just followed the leader wherever he went. And so that meant following Richard Daley on every budget he proposed, and Rahm Emanuel with every budget he proposed. So the notion that somehow aldermen have too much power, and that's the reason why the city is facing a financial crisis, I do not think is true.
And aside from ethics reform,
we have also started combing the city budget and contracts for efficiencies and savings. Here's where we are so far. We have taken important steps to professionalize the $100 million a year workers' compensation program. That program had been under the control of a single alderman who is now under federal indictment. There was zero transparency in that program. An independent audit found that well over 600 claims were open for over a decade without any resolution. And even though the city had paid almost $300 million towards these open claims, and the program was ripe for fraud, waste, and abuse. Just by professionalizing that program, we expect to reap significant savings.
I give her an A on this point. I've been giving her an A on this point for ever since she took office. She went right after Ed Burke. Ed Burke is the alderman she was alluding to, the powerful alderman of the 14th Ward on the southwest side of Chicago, who was the chairman of the Finance Committee for all these years during the Daley and Rahm administrations. And while he was running a property tax business on one hand, he was shepherding through all the contracts and all the budgets to the city council for approval. On the other hand, he was taking advantage of his power and his influence to get tax breaks for his clients, some of whom were also contractors with the city of Chicago. So it was corrupt. It fed that general notion that Lori was talking about, that you can't trust anything our government officials do. I would point out that the citizens of Chicago have consistently elected not only Ed Burke, but mayors who allowed him to have that power. But put that to a side for the moment. Lori Lightfoot took on Ed Burke very early on, and I give her credit for that. And so kudos to you, Lori Lightfoot. I give you an A in that.
One of the things Lori Lightfoot is most proud of as mayor?
One of the things that I am most proud of as mayor is our unequivocal support of immigrant and refugee communities. Now, why do I reference this important work in a speech about municipal finance? Because our growth strategy has to include continuing the reality of Chicago as a welcoming city. Contrary to the xenophobic rhetoric, immigrants contribute to our economy in significant ways. They always have.
And what did she know before?
What I knew before, and what has been reinforced over these last months, is that we need to build additional supports for low-income and working families because poverty is constantly knocking on their doors. Lifting people up and out of the grip of poverty will not only close the wealth gap with all of its terrible consequences and expand the pipeline of workers, but will close life expectancy and health gaps that rob people of their ability to fulfill their God-given potential. This is both a moral and fiscal imperative. Thus, our pathways to fiscal health have to run through households and neighborhoods like Roseland and Rogers Park, Austin and Inglewood, from the southeast and the southwest, and neighborhoods like Pullman and Park Manor. We must lead with public investment along with private partnerships to catalyze neighborhoods where generational poverty has people in its crushing grip.
All right, I'm going to take the 2 points that she raised there. The first point where she starts talking about immigration. Why do I raise this in a budget speech? And then she had her explanation. And I would say, Dee, it was a very political reason why she did it. And it's just to remind everybody that she, Lori Lightfoot, is not Donald Trump. All right, Lori Lightfoot's been getting blasted a lot by progressives around town, so it's very important in this speech, which is supposedly about the budget, that she just let everybody know that she is not Donald Trump. So he was the unmentioned person in that speech and that little aside, and I don't blame her for doing that. She's been taking a shellacking from progressives, some of whom have come right here on this show, and some will probably. I think we got Carlos next week, right? D. Alderman Carlos Ramirez-Rose. I'm sure he'll have a thing or two to say about Lori Lightfoot, but it's very important for her to establish in this speech that she is not Donald Trump. All right, at least on immigration. And in terms of the notion that the city has to be one city as opposed to a really wealthy downtown, this is a theme that Mayor Rahm would articulate all the time in a budget speech while he pursued policies that fed the overwhelming majority of our investment into a handful of gentrifying neighborhoods in and around the Loop. So it's still way too early to see if Lori is going to break from that old economic development policy of concentrating on a handful of neighborhoods. She didn't really address that in a specific way. And I wrote about this in today's column about the Lincoln Yards TIF deal. So it's way too early to see if Lori's going to make a real break from Rahm on the investment strategies.
But they have taken other additional steps, Ben, or initial steps.
Other initial steps towards creating a thriving economy for all. This includes the passage of the Fair Workweek legislation through the leadership of Alderman Susan Sadlowski Garza. And with the support of business groups, we passed legislation championed for years by organized labor that will give thousands of workers predictable schedules, which means predictable cash flow, and that makes for better, more loyal employees and stronger families. We took
Got to give her credit for that one, D. Got to give her an A for that one. The Fair Workweek legislation, we talked a lot about on the show. And by the way, it was no joke when she mentioned Alderwoman Susan Sadlowski Garza. Susan Sadlowski Garza, good friend of the show, been on the show many times from the southeast side of the city of Chicago. Comes from her father is one of the great labor leaders of the 60s and 70s. And Lori Lightfoot knew what she was doing when she put Sue Garza out there, because so many progressives who were allies of Sue Garza, including the Chicago Teachers Union, have been hammering Lori. And that was Lori's way of saying, oh, yeah? Well, my ally is Sue Sadlowski Garza. So take that, Chicago Teachers Union. The games politicians play.
When she started as mayor on May 20th,
When I started as mayor on May 20th, we walked into a projected deficit for next year of $1 billion. Yes, that's billion with a B. As a result of the efforts we have made to date and changes in our forecasting, that number has decreased by almost $200 million. But that still means that the budget gap for 2020 is $838 million. And if $838 million sounds like it's big, it's because it is.
but hey, let her be clear.
Let me be clear. Okay. I don't see the provision of pensions or city workers as the problem. The key problem is a decades-long failure to meet our pension obligations and fix the structural problems that have led to this crisis. Now, there are limits to what any mayor can do alone to generate revenue. We have and will continue to explore every reasonable option. And reasonable, to me, means relieving the financial burden on those least able to afford it and not driving business out of Chicago. As your mayor, I cannot in good faith promise you that I will take any option off the table to tackle this crisis, whether it's through budget reductions or by raising revenue.
All right, whether it's through budget reductions or raising revenue, cuts or new taxes, and that, I suppose, is what she's going to unveil in October, D. All right, don't forget the big October speech. I thought this was where she's going to unveil the cuts and the tax
Come
hikes.
October, I'll address those challenges further in my budget speech.
There you go, right? Come October, all right?
But what Lori Lightfoot can tell you,
But what I can tell you is that I will work tirelessly to ensure whatever options we take will be made with transparency and with working folks in mind. We are committed to a graduated real estate transfer tax. This will bring relief to homeowners whose houses sell for under $500,000, while owners with higher valued homes will pay more of their fair share. We are committed to addressing homelessness and housing instability and putting real resources towards these problems. We are exploring options to address rampant congestion that solves the problem of traffic, pollution, and other issues while simultaneously bringing in a fair share of funding. And we are working to develop a policy to stand up a robust cannabis industry, one that will not only generate revenue for the city, but creates new business and job opportunities for Black and brown people who have been the victims of the war on drugs and who to date have been mostly excluded from legitimate medical and recreational markets as entrepreneurs.
The crowd loved that one.
And what else are they pursuing?
Let me be clear. We are pursuing a Chicago casino that creates a dedicated revenue stream to pay for our pension costs. If we get the tax structure right, this will represent a structural solution to address long-term problems, not a one-time fix. Not only that, it will also create thousands of jobs, help fund the state's capital plan, and stop the flow of over $200 million in gaming revenue to Indiana. As an independent study made clear, Chicago and Springfield will need to work together to get the tax structure right in order to move this plan forward. Getting it right represents a win for both the city and our state, and there's no reason why we can't arrive at a solution. But we have to be honest with ourselves. If such an agreement isn't made, if we don't secure this casino and the revenue that it creates, we will then be forced to make painful choices on finding other revenue sources. And we all know what those are, the sources we desperately wish to avoid.
Yes. You got one more clip to play before we
Three more. So where do we go from here?
So where do we go from here? As challenging as our finances are, the truth is Chicago is not alone. It's a story being played out across our state. Cities and towns in every corner of Illinois are grappling with rising pension costs. Just like Chicago, they've sold their assets in order to make their pension contributions, only to find that their pensions are still poorly funded. And just like Chicago, many of these towns have been downgraded by rating agencies because their pension burdens are so severe. This increases the cost of borrowing. Just like Chicago has historically done, they've turned to raising property taxes. I want to avoid that measure as much as possible. But if we don't get the structural changes that our pensions need, we will be presented with very hard and limited options. Solving our shared pension problems will require the entire state to come together. People in the state know, as I do, that I-80 is not a border. There cannot be a Chicago versus the rest of the state. All of Illinois.
Now, as she said on Inauguration Day.
As I said on Inauguration Day, we should never settle for dividing up a shrinking pie or pitting one part of the city against another. Yes, some of our solutions will be hard. Yes, they may involve putting ourselves at risk. And if that means that I sacrifice myself politically, so be it in pursuit of the right thing.
And friends, we don't have a moment to lose.
Friends, we don't have a moment to lose. Chicago is and must remain the economic engine of our state and the entire Midwest. Our challenges are great, but our ability to solve them is even greater if we work together. It's only by working together as a city and a state that we can become what we need to be, to build and grow better together for a brighter future. Now is the time. Together, let's seize this moment to do the right thing, to chart a new course, and to put our city on a stronger path once and for all. Thank you, and God bless you, and God bless the great city of Chicago.
And there it was, Lori Lightfoot's State of the City address.
All right, very good, Dee. God bless the great city of Chicago. A lot to unpack there at the end there, particularly with that pension talk. Look, obviously, what she's saying, she's going to need some help from the governor, some help from the state on that one. And we're all going to be in it together, asking the state to bail out our pension plan. It'll be interesting to see if that goes anywhere in Springfield. Rummana Hussain is sitting here. We're going to bring her on to talk about Lori's speech and other things on Rummana's mind when we return.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan. Attention Chicago innovators and creators, 2019 Chicago Ideas Week is coming soon. October 12th through the 17th, this annual Ideas Festival is back, and it's the largest, most affordable Ideas Festival of its kind. They bring in hundreds of thought leaders from around the globe and some local to share ideas and spark action all across Chicago. To get a better idea of what to expect, here's a bit of audio from last year's Chicago Ideas Week with special guest and Chicago comedian Cameron Esposito.
Everything that I have ever tried to do has had two motivations. One is I really do believe in trying to create social change, and then the other one is I'm scared and alone too, so I would like for you to join me. You know, every job that I have, I try to make sure to hold the door open. That's like my motto for like if I get through, you're coming with me, and I believe in that wholeheartedly, and especially if I have more privilege than you, like I'm holding the door open for you even wider.
October 12th through the 17th, it's 2019 Chicago Ideas Week. Tickets go on sale to members on August 22nd and to general public September 10th. Once again, if you're an innovator or creator in the city of Chicago or even outside the city, you must join us for Chicago Ideas Week, October 12th through the 17th. For tickets and event information, head to chicagoideas.com. That's chicagoideas.com, and we hope to see you October 12th through the 17th for 2019 Chicago Ideas Week.
This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine.
Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Rummana Hussain is with us. Rummana comes to our show every Friday, Rummana Rundown. And it was pretty exciting today, Rummana, in the Sun-Times building because Mayor Lori Lightfoot made an appearance here as she's going from one editorial board to the other to pat herself on the back for doing a great job as our mayor. Did you have any Lori moments, by the way? Did you see her?
I actually, she's been here before, but I did not cross paths with her, but I knew she was already here because I was running late and I was walking in front of the building and I saw like three people with her security team was outside. So I'm like, oh, Lori Lightfoot's here. And I bumped into a freelance photographer who was looking for our photo editor. And then I was like, I don't know where. But then everybody's like, oh, he's in the back room. So I figured it started already and people kind of scrambling, or she was already there and she was waiting. And I know all the political reporters who were here went out. And by the way, Fran Spielman's off on vacation. So Tina Svandelis and Rachel Hinton did the heavy lifting on the speech yesterday and today.
Well, let's give a shout out to Mark Brown. He wrote a very good column today.
Yes, and he's in Barcelona right now. Just to let you know,
he wrote that from Barcelona.
I don't know where he wrote it from, but I don't know if he wrote it before he went to Barcelona. But it was mentioned at the editorial board meeting yesterday. They're like, Mark's in Barcelona, so Lori Lightfoot's the last thing on his mind. So
well,
I know
it's but
no, he's great.
He did a great job, and Dave Roeder did a great job setting up the speech. So it was all hands on deck because Fran Spielman happened to be on vacation when Lori made the speech. In the most general way, what was your response to the speech?
I'm not a political junkie like you, so I can just tell you I leave at 6 o'clock every day. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'm trying to make an exercise class. So I know everybody was all getting ready for the Lori speech. And I was like, I got to get out of here. But I read about it this morning. And from what I understand, she really didn't say much. So I wasn't missing much. from what I was told and what I read from our two reporters, Rachel Hinton and Tina Svandelis. And I know I joked with you. I think Fran Spielman knew this was going to happen. So that's why she took off this week, because she's like, well, nothing's going to happen. And I saw her lead in the story that said the main takeaway from her speech was that there was hard choices ahead and that there's an $838 million deficit. So that kind of made me laugh. And it was a 26-minute speech. And from what I read from our reporters, that was the biggest takeaway, that there's going to be hard choices. And, she touched upon, I know you guys played her audio. She touched upon things, generalities, I think. That's what it made it sound like.
Yeah, hard choices ahead.
Hard choices ahead, and a graduated income tax, right?
No,
or property tax.
Well, what she's talking about with that is, and that was a point when Dennis played that clip. That was a little misleading. What she's talking about, there's a proposal that she needs state approval for that would, follow me on this, put a transfer tax on the sale of property, real expensive property over $1 million. And so if you sold your condominium, let's say, and your condominium sold for $200,000, this would not affect you. If you sold your mansion for $2 million, it would affect you. Okay, so that
I don't have a mansion.
No, I'm saying.
Yeah, I know. I'm joking. I'm saying I wish I did.
Yeah.
But
Do you guys have a condominium?
We have a condo.
Okay, so if someone sells a condo for $200,000, you don't pay the tax. If someone sells a mansion for $2 million, you pay the tax. And she's saying that's progressive, but it doesn't really give relief on property tax to people, the general property tax, because that particular transfer tax would be very limited and would probably be swept up and gobbled up immediately. So it's not really as progressive as she was saying.
No. And, she did stress that I'm not going to, the burden's not going to be felt on people who are underprivileged. I think she stressed that. From what I understand, she stressed that.
Yeah, she stressed that. I'll be talking more about that with Delmarie Cobb. That's
okay.
Yeah. But that was all of her attempt to sort of undercut the criticism she's getting from progressives on that front. But I think you summed it up very well. Tough choices to come. In other words, the punt, as I put it, boom, she punted off until October. Like I said, the Bears should consider her for their field goal kicker, because she's got a powerful leg.
She's going to have community meetings, correct?
Yes, I will be attending them, yeah.
But that's kind of confusing. Like, wouldn't you want to put out your ideas, your concrete ideas, and have people, or what's the purpose of having the meetings?
Well,
She wants people to come up with ideas?
Yes.
Is that?
So here's how Mayor Daley did it, the great Mayor Daley. What he would say is, here's my general budget, but I got to hear, before I really put it and carve it in stone, I want to hear what you, the little people, have to say. So he would have 3 hearings around the city at roughly this time every year, in August, September, and he would listen to the little people, and they would tell him things like, I got a pothole on my street, and they would go fill the pothole.
Yeah.
All right, and then he would say, I've listened to the little people, here's my budget. So that's sort of what Lori Lightfoot's. I'm going to listen to you, the little people, and then I'm going to fill in the blanks. So it's.
So are you saying it's like the Who song?
What they say? Meet the old boss, same as the new boss. Isn't that the line?
Yeah.
No, I would not say.
I know.
You know what? I always give Lori Lightfoot credit for this. She is not Rahm Emanuel.
But you know what? You can't ride on that forever.
No, not forever.
And that, I know it's very early, but that just can't be, I'm just doing things differently than Rahm. That's the way I see it. And I've always seen it like that. I don't think you can.
You've always had a bit of a.
No, I don't. I'm not.
Bit of sympathy for Rahm. Just a touch.
Well, I think he's fairly criticized. I'm okay with that. But it's like there's some people who are just going to hate Rahm because he's Rahm. And I'm just saying, like, you have to be a little more critical. And it's like, okay, they're just going to like someone because they're not Rahm. And I don't think things are that simple. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I'm going to quote the great Mick Dumke to you.
I know.
Mick Dumke, of course, is Rummana's husband and my longtime friend and collaborator at the First Tuesday Show and at The Reader. But Mick always pointed out, in 2011, when I was really having reservations about who, I had no idea who to vote for mayor. Mm-hmm. And I would sometimes say, say things embarrassingly close to, I don't know, whoever we get, it's not going to be any better than Daley,
Yeah.
I wouldn't literally say that, but things close that Mick would say, you need a break. You got to have somebody new. You have to have somebody
Of course.
And so that's kind of how I feel about Rahm as well.
But you do realize that when Daley was in office, when he first started in office, I was only 18 years old.
She always loves to
I'm
remind
just
me of
saying.
that.
And then I was just like, it was like 30 years later, he was still mayor.
Yeah,
he was
I know.
mayor for most of my life. And so
yes.
Rom, I mean, just to be fair, Rom wasn't in office as that long. I know why he was not popular. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I'm just saying there's some people who definitely, it's like, I'm not saying all his ideas were good, but even if he made sense, there's some people who are just going to criticize whatever he had to say. And he should be criticized.
Yeah.
I think all leaders should be criticized. I don't think you're just going to be like, oh, I mean, I love this person because they're not Rom.
Well, I got to tell you
think-
this. I got a funny little message on my Facebook wall from a diehard Lori hater. Okay, someone who already hates Lori immensely, and I posted a column I wrote about TIFs that just came out and how Lori has abandoned any pretense of TIF reform, at least in regards to Lincoln Yards. And the person wrote something along the lines of, "You and the Sun-Times helped elect her, so shut up." So, okay, well, you can't argue with that. But I don't know how much.
And I do think, I even told you, like, the 100 days, I think that's too little time to tell whether or not someone's going to be a good mayor or a bad mayor, or just kind of, I think it takes time. But I'm just saying that you have to be ready to be critical too, and not just give someone a pass just because they're not Rom. That's all. That's all.
Fair enough. Just because she's not Rom. Hear that, Lori? But I still give her an A. That's the first. When I think about the first 100 days, just 100 days, my first 100 days, I give her an A for not being Rom. Okay,
of course. I'm not Rom either.
I don't think that. I give you an A for that every day. But I think that course ends. If you view these grades as related to a course, the not being Rom course is only something you could take for one semester.
Yeah.
All right. How about that?
It's a basic class, entry-level class.
Entry-level class. It's like 101 biology. That's what weeded out all the guys who said they went to college wanting to be doctors. All right, let's get on to our next topic. It wouldn't be a Rummana Rundown without some kind of criminal justice updates, and there's so much to choose from in the city of Chicago. What are you going to
we've had a few court updates this week, at least at 26 and Cal. We had a lot of like little things, but there was something in federal court where I don't know if you saw that R. Kelly's lawyer filed a petition saying that he doesn't want to be in solitary confinement anymore, I believe. And he said that his celebrity status is being used to punish him. And, the lawyer talked about how Steve Greenberg, his criminal attorney, talked about how, he has can't read. So, it's very difficult to get things to him, to talk to him. So that was like the latest. That was like it's not a huge thing, but obviously with R. Kelly, it's a big deal. Anything that happens with the case, it's kind of like Jussie Smollett. Everybody's interested. I just edited a story right before I came in. Do you remember the Tyshawn Lee case? It was a very, very sad case involving a 9-year-old boy who was shot. He was lured off. I forgot where I don't know if he was playing. He was playing in a playground, and these guys asked him if he wanted to play basketball. They lured him or get candy, and I forgot what the exact scenario was, but I remember covering the case when it happened. And this happened in 2015, and he was lured, and then he was shot
in an alley.
Yeah, he was only 9 years old, as I mentioned, and his father was purportedly in a rival gang, and that rival gang had shot. The mother was injured, and the brother of one of the three suspects was basically the brother was killed, and the mother was injured, and so this was revenge. And right now, just about a few minutes ago, I just posted a story about how the alleged gunman of Tyshawn Lee wants to represent himself in court when the trial starts in 2 weeks. And he actually asked to represent himself on Monday, and the judge said no. But then the judge seemed like he reconsidered and changed his mind, and this guy's going to represent himself. He's like, if this is what you want, you're going to represent yourself.
What's your general thought? First of all, just before we get to the general thought about defendants representing themselves, this murder was one of those. Oh, how do I put this, Rummana? There's a lot of murder. There's a lot of shooting in the city of Chicago, but then there's some murders that are just so shocking that you really have to just stop and think, where are we going as a society?
Yeah.
And the revenge killing of a 9-year-old was, and luring him into the alley with the candy.
It was basketball, or you want to play basketball, or I think that's what it was. But I know, if I remember correctly, I don't know, I could be wrong, but if memory jogs me right, I think one of them said, "Oh, you want to get some candy from the store or something before?" I don't know, but I do remember basketball was involved, and this is a really, really heartbreaking story. And I remember the dad of the victim. He was very young too, so it was just a sad story altogether. I was at criminal courts when it happened. So when I saw the name, I was like, I remember this guy. But so this guy's going to represent himself. It happens at court. I think what a lot of people don't get is that it does happen. I'm not saying it happens with frequency, but it's not super rare, but it is rare. I don't know. Some individuals read, and the judges tell them. This one case just a couple weeks ago, there was this homeless guy who had mental issues, who was charged in a killing of a Chicago police officer. This trial happened a couple weeks ago, and he represented himself. And I don't know, he was actually pretty good, but his closing arguments were really rambling. And the judge actually told him before he was representing himself that, you can't appeal this case on saying that you had bad counsel. So, and I've seen
wow.
I've seen judges tell I've seen judges tell individuals over and over again, like, are you sure you want to do this?
Yeah.
We can provide an assistant public defender for you, and this would be your best bet. So I've seen judges sway a lot of suspects, like, on telling them, do you really want to do this? Especially if it's before a jury.
Yeah.
So that case was before a jury. And in that case, I'm forgetting the guy's name, but he wasn't the alleged gunman. He was the man who pointed out this police officer he was actually pointing out the wrong person as a group of men that were tussling with his friends.
Yeah.
So that was, that happened a couple weeks ago. So it's interesting when high profile cases, when people do want to represent themselves.
By the way, what a moment of chutzpah. Chutzpah is generally defined as someone who kills his parent or his or her parents, and then pleads to the judge for mercy on the grounds that he or she is an orphan. That's usually the definition of chutzpah. But how about that, where you make this determination that you will defend yourself in court, and then when you lose, you appeal on the basis that you had a lousy lawyer. I'm like, it was your decision to hire yourself in the first place.
Yeah. So I know in the last case I just did with the cop killer, or the guy who was charged in the cop murder, the judge did say you can't appeal this and say you had ineffectual counsel.
Yeah, so that would make sense. And this, for a moment, let's go back to your days as a criminal trial reporter. How difficult is that? I can't imagine. I know I've asked you this before, Rummana, but how difficult is it when you have a case like Tashawn Lee's case, and you have the parents in court, and you have relatives of the defendants in court? Your job is to interview them. Isn't that correct?
Yeah.
So how do you approach the parent of somebody whose child has just been killed?
You do. I mean, you kind of learn how to do it. I remember the first time when I had to do that, call someone whose child was killed. It was the hardest thing for me to do. I was like shaking, but now it's kind of become second nature. I mean, the main thing you have to do is to be polite, and you're a human being too. At the end of the day, you don't want to be rude. I don't like, being just standing in front of them, putting my face in front of them. You have to be like, at 26 and Cal, it's a very sensitive subject. So usually, like, if we were covering the same case, me and the Tribune reporter, we'd try to go up to that person together, because it wasn't like a story one person had over the other. So we would just be like, hey, we're with the press. We'd quietly ask them and say, are there any thoughts you have? Anything you want to say about, the victim, or if it was a suspect, we'd say anything you want to say about, your child, and so, people sometimes were receptive. A lot of these individuals are coming from communities that are pretty much ignored, and they do want to get their stories out there. So 9 out of 10 times people would talk to you.
It's just listening to you, what you described there, that makes sense. Where, generally reporters are sort of, or adversaries or competitors looking for the scoop. But in a case like this, you say, all right, we're all going to be responsible adults and try to minimize the pain that this person has to go through. Have you ever had a moment when a reporter betrayed you? We don't really have names.
I don't want to
when
say
they went back and started talking to a person, got quotes and stuff that they.
No, I usually keep an eye on them, and it was always me and the Tribune that was there, so we'd always keep an eye on each other. Sometimes if I wouldn't see the Tribune reporter like at their desk, and I didn't know of any cases that were happening, I'm like, I would literally go through every courtroom from the second floor to the seventh floor and look for that person to see where they were. Sometimes they'd be working on a story completely unrelated, and they would do the same thing. But, there are cases that were really high profile where TV cameras would come in, and that's when judges would clamp down on, they would say that there's a gag order. So for something like the case involving Jennifer Hudson's relatives, the judges told me, they're like, we trust you guys, but we don't trust the other people. And so they had put all these rules, and, we had rules where our phones had to be silent and off, and nobody betrayed us, but they were like, we were both the media coordinators for a case like that. And we'd have to tell everyone, shut your phone off, or put it on silent. And then, of course, like within 5 minutes of when a trial started, somebody's phone went off. I won't say who it is, but it was someone from Fox. And
TV,
I remember the judge would call me, and it was Jason Meisner, who covers the federal courts now for the Tribune. Like, we were the media coordinators for that case, and the judge called us like during our lunch hour. He's like, tell so and so I knew it was his phone. And then like 5 minutes later, another TV reporter phone went off. And it was a recording of the 911 call in the Hudson case. And we're just like, and it was another TV reporter. And so the judge, like, at one point we all had our phones taken away. And it was the third time I think of reporter. It was a producer, and I actually like this person a lot. She was a producer for one of the local TV stations, and her audio thing started going off, and it started saying Balfour, and William Balfour was the guy convicted in these murders. And she said, I really didn't touch it. I don't know what happened. So we all had our phones taken away for that day. So like there are times where when it becomes like a media circus, you have to be careful. And, I'm not blaming TV reporters, but they have a different animal. I mean, their main thing is audio. So they have to actually, when they're getting visuals, they put the camera, now cameras are allowed in the courtroom in certain cases, but usually the cameramen and the photographers have to stay in a certain area. So it's very tricky. You have to find that person. You have to tell the photographers who they're looking for. And sometimes, they get the wrong person. We're like, nah, that's not the person you're supposed to get. So
when you say media coordinator, what's that mean?
That's for high profile cases. The judges tell, usually it's a Tribune and the Sun-Times. They say that you guys are the media coordinators, and you have to make sure everybody has their phones off. And
you have to police the media.
I had to police the media. Yeah, I remember telling this one specific reporter, make sure, and I think that the reporter said something like, "Are you gonna frisk me now?" or something. And then I'm like, he was joking, but I was like, no. I just kind of rolled my eyes, and then like 5 minutes later, his phone goes off in that case. So it's like, oh. So then me and Jason Meisner would have to like tell her, go and argue in front of the judge. And, sometimes we actually had to represent the media at one situation where we had to ask for the 911 tapes or something. So we had to actually pretend we were lawyers and tell the prosecutors why. So we had to stand in front of the judge, and me and the reporter from the Tribune had to talk. And these happens in high profile cases. Yeah.
But the first time I ever met you was, for what it's worth, Jennifer Hudson case. I was at the court on another matter, and I remember you walking in. It was for.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really early on.
It was probably when the case started. And the doors closed for those. So like the media is told, like I have to tell them, like, if you're not in, you have to get in. Yeah. And so, we had to kind of give everybody a briefing. They had that for Jason Van Dyke too. They had coordinators. And
but before we get to the Rummana recommendations, I get to talk about my recommendation. Do you believe that R. Kelly really cannot read?
I think he might have a learning disability. Yeah. I think he can read a little. He writes songs, but maybe he does it in audio. I don't know. He might have difficulty. Maybe he has a third grade reading level, and it's hard for him to read certain things. But it's possible, right? I know a lot of people say that's an excuse. That's what I've heard.
I don't know. But every time I read that in the paper, I'm like,
because did you watch the R. Kelly Lifetime series.
No, I
So
avoided that one. Yeah.
his ex-wife was on it, and she said that was one of the things that she found endearing about him when she first met him, is like because he wanted help on like reading, or it was something like his learning disability, and she thought that was sweet.
Well, anyway, I never really believed it. All right, let's move on to Rummana's recommendation. I'll start with my recommendation.
Yeah, go ahead.
Last night, while the whole rest of the city was watching,
I'm surprised
speech,
you don't watch it.
No, I watched it.
You
I
did
watched
watch
it on
it, okay.
tape because I had already had tickets at the Black Harvest Film Festival, which everybody who listens to my show knows I'm always promoting.
Cool.
Sergio Mims is a regular guest in the show. He's the director there. And they culminated the month-long festival at the Gene Siskel Theater with a special 25-year anniversary showing of the Spike Lee movie Crooklyn. And I've seen Crooklyn maybe 3 times before this, including when it first opened. And then I've seen it, I've rented it. It's one of my favorite movies, definitely in the top 10. For so many reasons, having to do with the era that it's the 1970s in Brooklyn, New York, and the music is the music I grew up listening. So obviously nostalgic reasons.
Yeah.
But it was so great seeing. I love that movie so freaking much. And they had Zelda Harris was there, who is 30-something years old, back in Crooklyn.
She was the little girl?
She's the little girl.
Oh, wow.
She killed it in that. When you watch her again,
I love that movie. I know a lot of people who love Spike Lee. They're just like, It's like one of his lesser known works. But I remember watching it and I loved it.
Well,
and my niece is 25, by the way, so that's why I was like, oh yeah, I think it came out.
It came out when she was born, 1994. I urge absolutely everyone to watch it. If you don't like it, tough. But I loved it. It was a great movie.
I was born in the early 70s, so like even though I was really little, like the songs, like I remember when they were watching The Partridge Family, I was just like,
it's a great scene.
And then remember when she goes to visit her cousin, her rich cousin?
Yes.
So her rich cousin had the same, my parents bought the house, like in the house that I grew up in the 70s, and the family that was in there, they had 2 boys and 1 girl. And they still had the old furniture, but I inherited the furniture. So I had the same furniture set that the rich girl.
Okay, time out. That's rich in quotes because
well, they were supposed to be more upper class.
Yes.
Not upper class, but they just had more money.
More money. These are people who lived in the suburbs of Washington, I think it is, or in Virginia somewhere. So it's more suburban lifestyle, but it's not rich like Jeffrey Epstein's
not
rich.
filthy. But it was a totally, completely different environment than the environment that this young girl was being raised in. Her parents were kind of struggling with money. I remember going when she went to go live with her
that's a
relatives at the furniture. I had the same furniture as the rich girl did. So I was like, oh, look, there's my furniture. So a lot of the 70s stuff, even though it was really little, it kind of resonated with me. And I just like the fact that this movie was about this little girl from the eyes of a little girl who's being raised with all her brothers and from her point of view. So
that's my recommendation. People, you can rent it. You can watch it at the old stream at Crooklyn. I know it's 25 years ago, but great flick. And your recommendation?
I don't know if I have any recommendations, but I'll tell you what I'm going to watch next. Okay. I'm going to watch the 3rd season of Glow. Have you watched Glow?
I watched the first show of Glow. Is that the one about the
gorgeous ladies of wrestling?
The wrestling one. Yeah, I only got through the first show.
I saw the first 2 seasons, and I got Mick to watch it too. He first was skeptical, but then he read a review and he said, "Oh, he said it was really good." I'm like, "Yeah, I told you that like a week ago."
I told you.
But anyway, I heard the 3rd season isn't that good, but I still want to watch it and give it another chance. And I don't know if you heard, but Brittany Runs a Marathon.
Yes.
That film is getting a lot of positive reviews. I don't know.
I may
check that out. And what did you think about Blinded by the Light?
2 thumbs way up. Blinded by the Light. I saw it. I didn't love it as much as Mick did. I only saw it once.
We both thought it was cheesy but fun.
Cheesy but fun. But nonetheless, he saw it a second time. I loved it. I don't even put cheesy in there, man. I like a movie. I like a movie.
It had some sappy moments, but it was fun.
I loved that movie. I loved it when the Bruce Springsteen were playing the. Well, anyway, that's the.
No spoilers.
Oh, wait, no spoiler alert. Anyway, Blinded by the Light. But I urge everyone to see Crooklyn. And Rummana Hussain, thank you so much for being here. Terry Cosgrove, yes, the man, the myth, the legend, TC they call him, is here. Got his big boy pants on.
Do you have yours on?
I got my big boy shorts on. Does that count?
I don't think so, pal.
Terry Cosgrove's ready to take prisoners, no names, whatever. We got TC on. Thank you so much, Rummana. We'll be right back after this.
Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. Discover the breadth and majesty of Chicago's architecture on a Chicago Architecture Center bus tour. From bungalows to Bauhaus, our expert docents will share the fascinating stories behind our city's architecture. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm actually on a bus tour right now. Oh my, look at that wonderful piece of architecture. Get a special discount for Illinois residents from July 15th to August 15th. All Illinois residents get 50% off select walking tours. Visit architecture.org/IL-resident.
Hey, everybody, what you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. J-E-F-F M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
So much to, be celebrating about the state. That helps you when you're trying to get things done, like, having the best state fair ever. As you heard, we broke records not just in the grandstand revenue, but also in terms of attendance here at the fair.
I noticed even the butter cow has a construction hard hat on this year. What?
All right, everybody. Hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show for Friday, August 30th is just moments away. Our guest, Terry Cosgrove's figuring out the headphones. They look good, buddy. Nice. But before we get into that, we'd like to thank the following unions once again for jumping on board and bringing back the Ben Joravsky Show. First up, it's the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 in District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. A giant thank you once again to those unions for jumping on board and bringing back the Ben Joravsky Show. And, of course, today's show is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2. Let's go. Thank goodness it is Friday, August 30th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, all-star Chicago political strategist Delmarie Cobb will join us, and right now in our studio, President and CEO of Personal Pack, Terry Cosgrove. And now your host, my favorite intro joke out of all, President and CEO of Nothing, Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Terry Cosgrove sitting right across the table from me. He's got his big boy pants on, and that is an allusion, of course, to what he used to tell me back in the day. Ben, put your big pants on and vote for J.B. Pritzker. I didn't listen to him. He's, as he likes to mention a few times, I voted for somebody else in the primary.
No one's perfect.
No one's perfect, not even me. Anyway, before we bring Terry on, you got an update for me, young man?
Absolutely, I do. 2 updates here. Number 1, now Lori's speech was last night, the State of the City address, but if you've yet to watch it, You can get a good warm-up, a pre-speech article by reading Ben's latest Chicago Reader article. It's titled Lori's Gettysburg Address. It's at thechicagoreader.com right now. Ben, tell everybody about that article.
I'll just tell you this. I predicted what you would say in the speech, and I got it right.
Oh,
Let's
my.
leave it at that.
All right.
And she ducked and dodged a little bit. That was sort of the point of the article. So I urge everybody to read that article. But not now, because we got Terry Cosgrove in the studio.
There you go. That's what I like to hear. All right. And our other update here, by the way, go check that out. ChicagoReader.com. I'll post it on the Facebook page later, the latest article from Ben. Now, we learned something yesterday, and I want to get Terry's take on this as well. Governor J.B. Pritzker suffered a hairline fracture to his left leg. We talked about this yesterday. His office confirmed this on Thursday afternoon. The injury will not require surgery, like we said, but doctor's orders will keep the state's top executive from making a trip to Japan.
Oh,
I didn't realize that.
That kept him from Japan.
Yeah.
I thought was it related to that butter cow thing?
Oh, you're talking about the 2019 State Fair butter cow?
It's the butter cow, which has 9 hearts to represent the 9 essential nutrients in milk. That's right. It's made entirely out of butter, and it's a State Fair tradition since at least 1922.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with that.
1922.
Nothing to do with that.
Terry Cosgrove, you were at the State Fair this year, were you not?
I was at the Democratic County Chairs brunch prior to the State Fair.
see.
I was there last year, though, and I have to say it was the first time I've ever been to a State Fair.
Did you see
And
the butter
perhaps
cow?
the last.
No.
No. On a very personal note, I do not like heat and humidity. I can't wait for fall to come and winter. And last year, it was like 98 degrees and humid.
Yeah.
It was, but I did have fun because there were a bunch of Bruce Rauner hecklers that were along the route that we were walking to the big tent. And I said, don't worry, when JB's elected, your wage will go up because he's going to raise the minimum wage and you people will get paid a decent wage. So
Wait, they were heckling on behalf of Bruce
yeah, they
Rauner?
had pictures. Yeah, they had pictures of JB, and they had, they had fake toilets and stuff like that.
And they were probably employees of Bruce Rauner, which meant they were getting less than minimum wage because he's so cheap. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to go there.
No. So we shouldn't waste time on that.
Let's not
But that was
waste
the
time.
enjoyable part of the fair. But otherwise, it was great to be with a lot of people I met a lot of people that I hadn't met before, that I'd known, names that I'd known for years. So that was that was the nice part of it.
All right. Now, I've already promoted the part of the show that I really want to take the deep dive with you on, and that has to do with the quote-unquote trifecta. We'll get into that. And the games the Republicans play when it comes to the whole issue of fair maps. We'll get into that because Terry and I may not have been eye to eye on who to vote for in the Democratic primary for governor in 2018, but we're definitely eye to eye on fair maps. What a scam. Anyway, but before we do that, just talk a little bit about Personal PAC's fundraiser that's coming up.
Right. September 23rd, we have our 26th annual fundraiser, annual awards luncheon, and Cecile Richards is the featured speaker. And I assume most of your listeners know who she is. She's the former president CEO of Planned Parenthood and was there during the first period of the Trump administration when Planned Parenthood was started to be under attack by the Trump administration. Now she's leading a group to organize women to vote more in the 2020 elections. And we are honoring U.S. Representative Jan Schakowsky, who happens to be my congressperson, for her lifetime of pro-choice leadership. And we're also honoring Mayor Lori Lightfoot. And finally, one of my heroes, which is Hope Clinic in Granite City, Illinois. And they are just a few miles on the Illinois side of the
618
of the Missouri border. 618. Thank you very much. And they provide abortion care to women, not just in Southern Illinois, but from Missouri, from Kentucky. And they have already seen several this first part of the year. Have already seen several thousand women from Missouri who were forced to come across the border because, as you probably know, there's only one remaining facility, and Dr. Erin King is the medical director at Hope Clinic, and her husband happens to be the medical director at St. Louis Planned Parenthood, which is the remaining clinic. So we're honoring Hope Clinic. Dr. Erin King is going to be at the luncheon to accept the award, and I swear they are on the front lines. I have gone down there twice in my 30 years at Personal PAC just to do an update with them on politics, and it is unbelievable. I get there early in the morning before they open to talk to the staff, and it's unbelievable to pull into the parking lot and see people sleeping in their cars who drove 9 and 10 hours from the western end of Missouri to get there, and who don't have enough money to stay in a hotel, so they arrive at 3 and 4 in the morning and sleep in their cars and wait for Hope Clinic to open. So they're just heroes of mine for being there. You know, they're not in a major metropolitan area. They're in a small town, and they get so much abuse from the anti-choicers, and they just keep going and providing service and providing care to women that need it from all over that area of the country.
I've been negligent. I assume most people know what Personal PAC is because Terry's been on our show many times, but just so everybody knows, it's the largest reproductive rights PAC in the state of Illinois. And as such, Terry Cosgrove has like a laser-like focus on electing representatives, senators, governors, congressmen, aldermen even, who are dedicated to this cause. So that's what Personal PAC is all about, and Cecile Richards will be their keynote speaker for 10 trivia points.
Yeah.
Here we go for 10 trivia points, young Terry Cosgrove.
Okay. Young, I like that. That's the best part of that sentence.
Who is Cecile Richards' mother?
Oh, Ann Richards. Oh, my God. Are you kidding?
I just threw it out there. I just wanted our listeners to know.
You mean when she gave her speech about what year was the speech? He was born with a silver spoon.
That was at the Democratic National Convention, and Ann Richards was the former governor of Texas, but this was before she was governor, before your favorite, George W. Bush. Just kidding. He's not really his favorite. George W. Bush defeated Ann Richards, and I want to say 1994, I want to say, because he won in 94, and then he won. Am I correct in that one?
You know, I was going to say
92?
92.
All right, whatever.
It was the 92 convention.
1988, wasn't it that Ann Richards made that keynote speech where she ripped George? Quote, he can't help it. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth.
Yeah.
Pretty clever lady. Yeah. Anyway, Ann Richards, the late, great Ann Richards. All right, let's move on to the what you call the trifecta. Explain to folks what that is.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk in the state, and this morning, right-wing state representative Peter Breen is hooking up with a right-wing group to try to force the right-wing Republicans to help draw the 177 legislative districts that are going to be redrawn after the 2020 election, as well as our congressional districts. And, there's a move in 22 Republican states to have their districts drawn to maximize Republican power. Some people call it gerrymandering, and that's fine. Well, here in Illinois, our state is controlled. We're one of the states. Our trifecta is a blue trifecta. So there's 22 states that have a completely dominated by Republicans, which means their Senate, their House, and their governors are all Republicans. There are only 14 states where that is true on the Democratic side. Illinois happens to be one of those. So what the people who are pushing this Republican involvement in the mapping process in Illinois are basically saying is that we should throw up the white flag, let these 22 Republican states, including Michigan, which Ben, I think, is going to talk about what's going on there, is they're all going to draw maps that are going to put right-wing Republicans in Congress, and they want to draw a map in Illinois that will basically cut out Sean Casten and Lauren Underwood and Betsy Longren if she wins in 2020. So we're supposed to throw up the white flag and go along with this so-called fair map idea.
Those three Congress people that Terry alluded to are in quote-unquote swing districts,
right.
Where if you redistrict them, they're all Democrats that he mentioned, they could be redistricted out of political existence.
Right.
Go ahead.
And I think progressives, and I know I have a very specific interest because I work in the area of reproductive rights, but what we need the Illinois General Assembly to do is for the Democratic the whole General Assembly, but we need a Democratic majority. There is not a single moderate Republican left in the Illinois General Assembly. I want to underline every single Republican senator, and we're a bipartisan organization, so I'm coming to this from a bipartisan standpoint, but not a single Republican state representative, Republican senator is pro-choice. They are all right-wingers. So what we need, what the women of Illinois need, what progressives in the state of Illinois need is for the Democrats of the Illinois General Assembly to draw that map and for Governor Pritzker to sign it. And so that between now and 2032, because Roe is going to be gone, that Illinois can remain to be a state in the Midwest when all the other states around us are making abortion illegal or closing down every single clinic, to make sure that the women of Illinois have their reproductive rights safeguarded between now and 2032, because this map that will be drawn after the 2020 election will be in force until 2032, which is the next decade, and we just have to have that happen, and we cannot throw out the white flag, and we have to protect Illinois.
Well, this is one of the reasons why Terry Cosgrove would always tell me to put my big boy pants on and vote for J.B. Pritzker, although I didn't follow his advice. But anyway, the point being, this is why the Rauner...
But are you unhappy with...
No, I'm not unhappy at all. In fact, I just have to tell you this. You'll get a kick out of this. We had as a guest at our show, Brandon Johnson, who is a Cook County Board Commissioner from the western side of side of Chicago and western suburbs, and a Chicago Teachers Union member. And he was pointing out, he's one of the leading progressives in the city of Chicago, and they don't get more progressive than Brandon Johnson, okay? And so he's got his issues with Lori Lightfoot, all right? So I'm not asking you to step in the middle of that one. But he said, it was Brandon was the one that came on the show. He goes, I can't believe how progressive J.B. Pritzker has been across the board. So I got no problem with J.B. Pritzker at the moment, all right? So let's put, you were right, I was wrong. How many times am I going to say that?
No.
Dang, man.
You're the one bringing it up. I never bring it up.
But the point is, one of the reasons...
Making you honest, Ben.
One of the reasons why it was so important for Democrats to elect a governor is because the bizarre system we have in the state of Illinois for redistricting is that if we have any kind of division, if you have a Republican governor, he can veto the map as drawn by the Democrats, and then ultimately would come out of picking a name out of a hat as to who ultimately would prevail. But if you have the trifecta, if the Democrats control the governor, the House, and the Senate, the Democrats are going to control the map. Now, a lot of people, my good government friends out there, are, Ben, that's so unfair. What we should have...
Which one of your friends is that?
What am I...
Who's that an impression of?
I don't know.
I keep them honest too, Terry.
I got a name there, but I'll leave it alone. Ben, you're too partisan. We should be bipartisan. I'm like, when Republicans play fair, I will play fair. I will sign on to your little fair map thing when Republicans play fair. But Republicans do not play fair, Terry Cosgrove.
And I know that. Well, this, to me, this is absolutely no different than the argument I've gotten into people about Citizens United and money in politics. And it seems like every single time I come on the show or I speak anywhere, I have to say the same thing. And your listeners are probably tired of it. You're probably tired of it. But I cannot go into a knife fight with a leg in a cast, an arm tied behind my back with a toothpick and expect to win. It isn't going to happen. So this is another version of that. We have to play on a fair playing field. And if there are going to be 22 states that are going to draw maps that are going to favor Republicans, and these 14 Democratic states are say, you know what, we're not going to do that. We're just going to we're not going to play on the same field, the fair field, and we're going to wonder why we lose. Well, we're going to lose the majority in the Congress. Right. And we're going to lose the majority in the and I don't mean we being Democrats, I mean me being just progressives, because there are no good Republicans left. It's ridiculous. It's such a straw argument. So I'm all in favor of fair maps, but it has to be in 50 states.
Yes.
I think that's the bottom line on this. When it's and I will say this to all my good government friends, when there is a fair map in all 50 states, sign me up. I will be a co-chair of that committee. But until then, we have to fight fair on a fair playing field.
I'll go one step further, though. I'm a little tougher than you. I will sign on to the quote-unquote, I will sign on to quote-unquote fair maps, in quotes, when my Republican brothers and sisters sign on to eradicating the Electoral College.
Right.
Okay. I mean, that you talk about a system that's set up to guarantee that Republicans win and Democrats lose. All right, let's put electoral.
And I want to put another point on this that I think gets lost in all of it. when your friend Bruce Rauner was
I knew you were doing there. I know you're going to go there.
No, this is a critical point on this exact discussion. He sent a bill to the Illinois General Assembly for fair maps.
Yes,
and you know what was excluded from it? All of the voting rights provisions. So we have to understand, in fact, I want you to have some people of color on your show and other people to talk about this, because what this fair map provision did in the Rauner bill that they wanted voted on, it gave no consideration whatsoever to minority voting rights, to the Voting Rights Act, or anything. So this is another level of voter suppression and are diminishing the impact of people of color's voting rights in the state of Illinois and across the country. And if people don't know that the voting rights in this country are under attack, then you're not paying attention.
All right.
And we're not going to go along with it.
Yes.
I mean, the bottom line is we need to stand up to the attacks that are going on people of color and on the voting rights in this state, in this country, and say, no, not on our watch. And that's why it's important that the map be drawn by President Cullerton's caucus, Speaker Madigan's caucus, and JB is involved with
Just
it.
say
to
it.
respect
Democrats.
No, but to respect voting rights.
Yes.
That's the other piece of this.
All right, now let's talk about, and I'm going to get into what I really want to get into, the utter hypocrisy of the Republican Party on this issue, and I'm going to raise the question of Michigan. In the state of Michigan, our friends to the north and the east, for all those geographically challenged people. Did I get it right, by the way? Yes, north and east. The state of Michigan had a referendum, I think it was in 2018, where they voted over 60% to set up a fair map commission. In other words, they were tired of gerrymandering because the gerrymandering in the state of Michigan, ladies and gentlemen, is done by Republicans. And they set up a situation where even though most of the people in the state were voting Democrat, the Republicans controlled both houses of the state. So the people of Michigan, the good voters of Michigan, decided, no, we're going to get rid of that old gerrymandering way, and we're going to have a fair map commission that's going to draw the map fair and equitably, and we're probably going to have more Democrats as a result of that, okay? Or more moderate Republicans, could go either way. Less Trump heads running in the state of Illinois. So what did the Republican Party do? The same Republican Party that here in the state of Illinois is saying, oh, we really want a fair map. What did the Republicans in Michigan do? They got in Scott Walker, the former governor of Wisconsin, who's got booted out of his office. Thank you, cheeseheads. They got Scott Walker to file a lawsuit, a federal lawsuit. Didn't mean to insult any cheeseheads in the studio. To file a federal lawsuit challenging that fair map commission on the grounds that somehow or other it's unconstitutional. Lord knows how it's unconstitutional. You can find a lawyer to say absolutely anything. So I'm not even going to waste my time talking about the silly flim-flam argument that lawyer came up with. The point is, Terry, on one hand, in the state of Illinois, you got your boy Peter Breen getting ready to file a suit saying, we need a fair map commission because it's so unfair when the Democrats, and then you got Peter Breen's ally, Scott Walker in Michigan, where they passed by referendum a fair map commission, going to court saying it's unconstitutional. Nothing is more hypocritical than that, my friend.
Right. And the other thing is they are trying to cut Governor Evers in Wisconsin out of the duly elected Democratic governor. The Republicans in Wisconsin are trying to cut him out of the map making, where it could be a compromise between the Democratic governor and Republican legislature. Let's come up with a map. And what are the Republicans doing? They're cutting the governor of Wisconsin out of the process. And you said Peter Breen is filing a lawsuit. Actually, what he's doing is he's putting together an organization funded by massive right-wing money. And for people that don't know, Peter Breen is one of the most reactionary, anti-choice, anti-LGBTQ state legislators to ever sit in the Illinois General Assembly. He was defeated in the 2018 election. Now he's amassing all this right-wing money to put a ballot measure on the November 2020 ballot that will try to get fair maps to amend the Illinois Constitution. It's a constitutional amendment, so we have to watch out for that and make sure
I don't
it's
think
defeated.
you're saying that he's hoping to get it by what date did you say?
2020. He's got to get 360,000 signatures.
And then he's
valid
got
signatures.
And then he's this is going to be so funny coming out for me. And then he's got to survive Michael Madigan's election lawyer, because that baby's going to be challenged.
Oh, yeah. Well, as it should be. He needs 360 valid signatures. That's what the law says.
That's what the law says.
That's what
everybody.
the law says. And
it's a tough law.
Yeah. But you know what? Amending the Constitution is supposed to be an upward climb. It's not supposed to be easy. So
or maybe he can get the vote.
And that's what's fair, because it applies to everyone, including Peter Breen.
Yeah. So it's the games Republicans play. It's hard to take at face value.
It is. The hypocrisy, Ben, all across the board on so many issues. I mean, this is just another. This is totally about, amassing power to push through their right-wing agenda, starting with Trump, Moscow Mitch, all the way down the ballot. Everywhere you turn, it's the exact same thing.
And I'll say one more thing. This show is sponsored by unions. I'm a huge union supporter. I want to say to all my union brothers and sisters out there, they pull these stunts, and the Ronners of the world, and the Breens of the world, and the Scott Walkers of the world, they're coming for unions.
Oh, yeah.
And so they'll use anything they can to get the power they need, and then they'll impose laws that undercut the ability of unions to organize, take away your collective bargaining rights. So it goes far beyond.
Yeah, and I want to put a pitch in for my union brothers and sisters. We have the 40-hour work week. We have Social Security. We have child labor laws. We have so many workplace protections that all of us have benefited from. The workplace protections, the safety in our food, water, all of those protections are brought about by workplace safety provisions that are brought to us by unions. So everyone in this country, in this world, benefits, not to mention fair wages, from the activities of union members. So on this Labor Day, I just want to hats off, thank you. Thank our brothers and sisters in the labor union for
Labor Days.
And they're under massive attack by Trump and the right wing, just in the same way reproductive rights is under attack, same way LGBTQ rights, people of color, poor people. It's the same source, it's the same ideology.
Absolutely, well said, Terry. All right, let's get down to some local races. I know there's a local race of great concern to you. Talk about it.
Yes, State Representative Yehiel Kalish represents the 16th House District, which is Skokie, Lincolnwood, Morton Grove, part of Niles, and the 50th Ward of Chicago. And he promised publicly and privately and to everyone that he would vote for the Reproductive Health Act. And the morning of the vote, he did not vote for it. Mm-hmm. So the constituents in his district are furious with him, and there is a woman by the name of Denise Wang Stoneback that is challenging him in the Democratic 2020 primary. And everyone listening that's to the show that's from the 16th House District, from those communities, please go online, sign up, Denise for state rep, and get involved with this campaign. It is really critical that we send a very, very serious message to any legislator that promises to vote for something like the Reproductive Health Act and then turns around. And he lied to everyone. He told me, he told Planned Parenthood, he told the ACLU, he stood up in the Democratic caucus when Lou Lang, he's an appointed state rep, State Representative Lou Lang, who is also the Democratic committee person for Niles Township, appointed him to the seat. And one of the things he promised Lou Lang when he got appointed, that he would vote for this bill. So he lied to absolutely everyone. In addition, he was carrying a bill that would have not allowed people to bring concealed weapons into houses of worship, such as temples, mosques, and churches. And when the NRA came to him, he refused to call his own bill. He buried it. So he can't be trusted. He lies to everyone. He doesn't stand up with what this district is about. It's about gun safety. It's about choice. It's about fairness, equality, and he's the wrong state representative for this district. And we really have to get rid of him in the March 17, 2020 primary. So everyone in Skokie, Lincolnwood, Morton Grove, the 50th Ward, let's do this.
That's your old neck of the woods, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I grew up in Morton
there.
Grove. I went to high school at Niles West in Skokie, and Edison Grammar School in Skokie and Lincoln Junior High, all in Skokie. So
this is my Niles West day. I don't know if you know this, but Rummana Hussain, who preceded you on the show, is also an illustrious graduate of Niles West. Yes.
Right. And you know who else? The most illustrious graduate of Niles West, which is actually, I was in high school with him at the same time, was Merrick Garland.
Well, I was just going to say Merrick Garland. I don't know. There was a football player, I think Jim Ray Hart. I don't know. I know you're not a huge sports fan, but some would argue that he is the most illustrious graduate of Niles West.
Okay.
I'm putting my money on a tie between Rummana Hussain and Terry Cosgrove. Those are the most illustrious graduates of Niles West.
Well,
Forget Merrick Garland.
I think Merrick Garland, a federal judge who almost got on the Supreme Court.
Speaking which, come on, let's just take a moment to talk about the utter hypocrisy. Hey, my fair map, good government friends out there.
I know, Ben. If we were here between now and Tuesday, we could not cover all the hypocrisy.
Unbelievable.
It's so raw. It's so visible.
Out there.
It just stands there like a burning bush or something.
No, that was the one where Mitch McConnell, just to remind everybody, we had a vacancy. Scalia had died. There was a vacancy at least a year before the November 2016 presidential election. Barack Obama was the president, a Democrat. He proposed that Merrick Garland fill the vacancy, and Mitch McConnell would not even give him a hearing on the grounds that, and this is why I say, folks, you can find somebody to make up any argument at any given time, that the people should speak. The people should be allowed to speak and have a referendum.
Right.
And by the way, literally, I'm just throwing this out there, Terry, if you do a referendum by sheer majority, the people spoke.
Yeah.
And they voted for Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump.
Don't get me started.
Well, don't get me. I was the one who said Electoral College. Get rid of it.
I know.
That was part of my deal. I'll sign on to that Fair Map Commission if you get rid of the Electoral College.
Right.
All right. So, hey, I'm sticking hard to my
No, you're doing your job.
So Merrick Garland could have been.
Well, have you heard Moscow Mitch's new rationale for why, if an appointment comes up before the November election, that the difference is because Republicans control the White House and the Senate, that was the reason why it should happen. The reason why they didn't do it because it was a split between.
That is a distinction without meaning.
Exactly.
Because the basic referendum is still a basic referendum.
Right. Exactly.
That's what I said. They'll say absolutely anything.
Right.
It's like Scott Walker going to court to defeat a Fair Map Commission that the voters approved in Michigan. Follow me, folks, one more time. He's in court trying to defeat an initiative.
Filed a federal lawsuit.
File a federal lawsuit while Peter Breen in the state of Illinois is, hey, let's have a referendum on a Fair Map Commission. I'm like, which one is it, Pete? You know, are you for it only when it's Democrats who are in charge? You know, is that? And yes, the answer is obviously.
Right.
By the way, as I got you in the hot seat, I wanted to throw something out at you that one of our guests had to say, and that is this. This had to do with the Merrick Garland situation. Put on your political strategist hat.
Okay.
And I know this is ancient history, and you only want to look ahead. Okay, we got all that taken care of. Now, a strategist who came on the show said that Barack Obama made a mistake by appointing Merrick Garland. Not that he wasn't qualified. He was eminently qualified. Put that to the side. Yeah. But politically speaking, Barack Obama figured what I'll do is I'll get sort of a mainstream jurist that moderates could not object to on ideological grounds and put him up. And the Republicans will have to go along because ideologically speaking, he'll be more in line with Republicans. And David Ferris, who's a political scientist, comes on the show all the time, said that was a mistake. He should have taken a fierce ideologue, preferably a black woman, put her up there and let the chips fall where they may. Fire up the Democratic base. This is someone you could support, just like the Republicans did with Kavanaugh. They never pull their punches. They put Kavanaugh out there, who's just a political hitman for the Republican Party. You know that as well as I do.
Right.
So what's your thoughts on that?
I could see that. I could see that argument. And let me just say this in retrospect. It's always easy
Monday morning quarterback.
To be a Monday morning quarterback. Yeah. So, I mean, the reality is we thought that Hillary Clinton was going to win the election. And I think, I think a lot of people were involved in that decision, advising President Obama, and he thought he was doing the right thing. So, but I can see that point of view, that it would have fired up the base. It would have
I mean, it's one thing to go into the...
Especially when you consider there were 77,000 votes that were 84,000 that made the difference in the election. You could certainly make the argument that had he tried to appoint a fierce African-American woman, that would have revved up the base. And so I could see it. I can definitely see it. But again... Monday morning quarterbacking.
Everything. Monroe Anderson, who comes on the show, always says it was the perfect storm that led to Donald Trump's electoral college victory, and that was one aspect.
There are many aspects of it.
All right. Now, what other legislative races do you want to highlight? Any other legislative races? I've heard about that. The Democrats are hoping to take Jeannie Ives' seat into Page County, her old seat. Any truth to that rumor?
Yeah. There is. I mean, the 2018 race, the Democrat came very, very close to winning that race, and there's search for a candidate who can do it. Yeah, this time around. Yeah,
that would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, when you look at what's happening in DuPage County and a lot of these suburban districts, it's not it's not far off the mark. I mean, they're just so alienating women and moderate people across the board. And, Jeannie Ives is back. That's the...
That is right. I forgot that. She's running in the 14th Congressional. Do I have that right?
Yeah, for the Lauren Underwood seat.
For the Lauren Underwood seat.
No, Sean Casten. I'm sorry. It's Sean Casten.
It's
Sean Casten.
She's running against... You know what? I'm momentarily blanking on this one.
I made a mistake. It's Sean Casten.
She's running against Sean Casten. All right. My next guest, Delmarie Cobb, has arrived in the building. So before I let you go, Terry, I'm going to put you on the hot seat one more time. Is there anybody that you're favoring for the presidential nomination, or are you just sitting back and enjoying the show?
Here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to tell you what my point of view is on this and not have you interrupt me until I'm done. To respond. No. Because
I love Terry Cosgrove visits.
No, because I have a very clear perspective on this.
Go ahead.
So let me get to your question, but I'm going to back into it.
All right, here we go.
On June 7th at 10 p.m., 2016, California time, Hillary Clinton was the Democratic nominee for president. She went to the convention. That whole time between June 7th and that convention, she was harassed. She was criticized when she was the nominee. And when she gave her acceptance speech at the convention, 500 Bernie Sanders people got up and walked out on her and tried to humiliate her. And that went all the way through the November election. And anyone that did not support fully Hillary Clinton from 10 p.m., June 7th, California time, 2016, owns Donald Trump right now. We are now looking at the 2020 election. There are several candidates running for president that I don't particularly like. I am not going to say a bad thing about any of them because like in 2016, like in 2020, I don't care if it's a lobotomized fruit fly that's a Democratic nominee. No, we had a moral responsibility in 2016 to defeat this monster. We have a moral responsibility in 2020 to save this planet, to save reproductive rights, to save this world from this monster. So I am not going to sit here and criticize a single one of the people running for the presidential race right now. All I know is when that Democratic convention takes place in the city of Milwaukee next year, every single person who cares one iota about the future of our democracy and of the world should get behind that candidate. And I don't care if it's a lobotomized flea.
Okay.
We have a moral responsibility. So that is my,
you know what?
That is my view on this. And I swear, if I hear anyone criticizing whoever the nominee is, my head will explode because we have a moral responsibility to defeat Donald Trump, and that is it. That's the final thing here.
All I can say is touche. That's all I can say.
Oh, tell me your thoughts about Pete Buttigieg.
Oh, he's not. I don't have to waste my time talking about Pete Buttigieg because he is at less than 1% among black voters in this country. Less than 1%. So he's not going to be the nominee. But if Pete Buttigieg was the nominee, I got my Mayor Pete t-shirt right here and I'd be wearing
Let's talk about what really matters.
Yeah.
If we are going to sit and fight and criticize and tear down the lobotomized fly, or better, that comes out of the Democratic primary, then we are fools, because all we're doing is handling the election of Donald Trump. And if that's what people want to do, fine. Go ahead and do it, but you know what? You're destroying this planet. Yeah.
All right, that is Terry Cosgrove from Personal Pack. Delmarie Cobb is on deck, ready to come on. TC, it's a blast talking to you as always. I think I got you booked already for September, so
absolutely, I'll be
see
back.
You then.
Yeah.
I will take a break and bring on Delmarie Cobb after this. At Chicagoland Cremation Options, we are committed to listening, educating, and guiding your family through the cremation process. Whether it is time of death or when planning your wishes for the future, Chicagoland Cremation Options can accommodate you at an affordable price and with great dignity. Avoid funeral home costs with direct access to a crematory for a cremation. Chicagoland Cremation Options, just south of O'Hare, 5 minutes west of Chicago. It's a family-owned business and operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Visit it at ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
Attention Chicago innovators and creators, 2019 Chicago Ideas Week is coming soon. October 12th through the 17th, this annual Ideas Festival is back, and it's the largest, most affordable Ideas Festival of its kind. They bring in hundreds of thought leaders from around the globe and some local to share ideas and spark action all across Chicago. To get a better idea of what to expect, here's a bit of audio from last year's Chicago Ideas Week with special guest and Chicago comedian Hannibal Buress.
The real reason I came home is just because I was traveling a lot anyway. I wasn't in New York that much, and I don't have a full-time job in New York. I work a lot, but I'm not in New York, so it was just like I don't need to be here anymore. And also I just wanted to work on different stuff here in Chicago. So I have this center that I'm working on the west side, Melvina Masterminds. It's gonna be arts and after school programming for kids in the North Austin area. So just wanted to be back. There we go.
October 12th through the 17th, it's 2019 Chicago Ideas Week. Tickets go on sale to members on August 22nd and to general public September 10th. Once again, if you're an innovator or creator in the city of Chicago or even outside the city, you must join us for Chicago Ideas Week, October 12th through the 17th. For tickets and event information, head to chicagoideas.com. That's chicagoideas.com, and we hope to see you October 12th through the 17th. Ready, set, 2020. What's that mean? That means it's almost football season, which means that the best sports reporters in Chicago want to offer you, yes, you, our listeners, an exclusive deal on unlimited digital access to all of the stories that you love. Do not miss a game this season. Get all the big play scores and stories from the Chicago Sun-Times. For a limited time only, you, YOU, can test out digital access for only $1. Seriously, $1. There's no reason to not give this a shot. Stay up to date on breaking stories, get the deep dives and investigations from Sun-Times reporters, cheer for the big games with the best sports team in the city, and go deep inside City Hall with best-in-class political reporting. $1, I say, for your first month, and you can't do better than that. Take advantage of this exclusive deal now at suntimes.com/Ben. And hey, speaking of Ben, welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Terry Cosgrove has left the studio, but Delmarie Cobb is entered the studio. Delmarie Cobb, legendary political strategist in this town. And folks, I wish we had the mics on for the exchange when Delmarie walked in and Terry walked out, because the conversation kept going, Delmarie. It was quite heated. First of all, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much.
And I mainly wanted to talk to you about Lori Lightfoot's speech. Mm-hmm. But I'm so fired up from what Terry closed, and you were listening to Terry's closing comments on the divisions in the Democratic Party in 2016. And people say, Ben, why do you keep bringing this up? Well, I'll tell you why, and I want your reaction. I believe that so many Democrats are failing to recognize that they were manipulated. And they were manipulated to a large degree by Republican political operatives and President Putin, okay? Because those emails that the Russian hackers took out of the Democratic computers and then dumped on the world for everybody to see, exposed all the rifts, behind the scene rifts between the Hillary people and the Bernie people. And you know as well as I do, Delmarie, that if those Russian hackers had taken Bernie's emails, they'd found emails trashing the hell out of Hillary Clinton people. Do you get what I'm saying?
Exactly.
It was a heated primary. People say all kinds of things in a heated primary. They say stuff right here in the open when they come on my show and they're fighting. It's even going to be worse. But those Bernie Sanders people who were crying over those emails, I've never really understood how they could hold a grudge for so long. Please explain that to me.
Well, you know, I found it amazing as well because, again, I was with Hillary in 2008. I was with her at the convention. I was a delegate. And I was there when she called all of her delegates in the room and said, against everybody yelling and screaming and saying no, you've got to support Barack Obama. He's our nominee. Mm-hmm. And to make sure that there was peace and unity, they had, if you remember, Hillary Clinton make the nominating speech that took Barack Obama over the top. Mm-hmm. Because, of course, when they came to the convention, neither one of them had enough delegates to become the nominee. The same thing when I was with Jackson in 1988. Jesse Jackson, when he ran in 1988. 2,000 of his delegates got in a room and screamed and yelled because they wanted him to take the fight to the floor to be the vice president. He said no. He decided no against all the protests. And he said we have to have unity. And so when you get to that part in the race, you can fight like hell leading up to the convention. Mm-hmm. But when you get to the convention, you have to put your ego to the side and put the good of the party to the forefront and say, this is where I am. This is what I'm going to do. Yes, this person may not be my number one choice, but this is who the nominee is, and we've got to get behind that person, regardless of who it is.
I agree with you. And by the way, I want to point out, I was a Bernie person in 20s. I voted for Bernie over Hillary Clinton, but it never dawned on me that I would not vote for Hillary Clinton. That just never dawned on me, you know.
And people were just so immature. I think that was my fifth convention in 2016. And it was the first one where I saw that kind of behavior. I mean, it was just complete immaturity. People sitting there pouting and yelling and stop the fracking. And as you heard me say to Terry, every time a black person of note got up on the stage to speak, the mayor of Flint, Michigan, who we had deaths because of lead in the water. She's talking, and Bernie's people are yelling, stop the fracking, stop the fracking, stop the fracking. Elijah Cumming, who's now a hero, who they didn't know in 2016. Yeah, they didn't know him in 2016. He's standing up there speaking. They're yelling, stop the fracking, stop the fracking. In the big scheme of things, what the hell does fracking have to do with people dying? Little kids dying in Flint. And so the next morning, I said something because we were trying to be unified. So we had a Bernie person working with us. And I took him to the side and said, you know what you keep doing? And he hadn't even noticed it. He was a young guy. He hadn't noticed it. And I mentioned it to him. I said, you all have got to stop. And then you wonder why black people didn't support you? You don't even care about black issues. Because every time somebody black gets up there to speak, you're talking about fracking.
What was his response?
And he just sort of looked at me.
Delmarie Cobb, too tough on me. No, it's always hard to be a Democrat. There's wide ideological gaps. I know that because everybody trots through this show. I always say, Delmarie, I got everybody on the right, my Joe Biden friends, and everybody to the left of them. And so I know about the ideological gap in the Democratic Party. I realize that. And then on top of that, there's a racial issue. Well, it's really hard in this country for white and black people to figure things out. You're putting them in one. Republicans don't have to worry about that. There aren't any black people, except for a few confused ones. All right? So the Democrats have to deal with the racial issues. And those are really tough to deal with. You're talking about 600 years of it's very frustrating. When Terry went on that riff there at the end there, I just brought back a lot of memories.
No, it is frustrating because as a woman, as a black person, as a person who supported Hillary, to see the way the media, and then even now to hear every time there's a reference, it's she didn't go to the States. She didn't do what she was supposed to do. As I said, no, she did not run a good campaign. If she had run the campaign in 2016 that she ran in 2008, she might be the nominee now. I mean, she might be the president now. But no, she didn't. But she lost by 70,000 votes of 3 states.
She lost the Electoral College.
Yes, exactly. By 70,000 votes. Of course, she won the popular vote, but that's not how you become president in this country.
Wow.
So she lost by 70,000 votes in the Electoral College. But the bottom line is, everybody was complicit to some degree to her loss because the media, there was this air of inevitability, and she was never inevitable. And that's what even I was dealing with the party and yelling and screaming because I could tell there was this air of, we're already picking out the furniture. And I'm like, no, you can't pick out the furniture till you win.
Yeah.
And I've seen that so many times because I've worked so many campaigns where that's happened. And every time that happens, you lose.
Yeah. All right, since we're on national, before we get to Lori, I know we were supposed to talk Lori. We'll get to Lori, but let's just keep it national for a while. And I was just alluding to the racial issues in the Democratic Party, trying to get black and white people. Can we just get along, as they say? Mayor Pete came to Chicago.
Yeah, if you would acknowledge our issues.
Yeah, a lot harder for a lot of people to do. Mayor Pete came to Chicago, the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. Is going to have a rally on the south side of Chicago. He was going to address issues of importance to the black community. He has a plan named after Frederick Douglass. How about that? The poor man's been dead for years, and they're still using his name on plans. And lo and behold, almost everybody in the audience was white. What's going on?
Well, let me say, Ben, first of all, it was almost next door to my house.
That's right.
And I didn't know about it. So if I didn't know about it and it was next door to my house, who did you call? Is what I was wondering. Yeah. When I read about it, I'm like, well, who did you call? Because I've had Kristen Gillibrand's people calling me since day one. I don't know how they got my name, but I mean, literally, they've been emailing me and calling me and inviting me to things. So who are you reaching out to in the black community that you don't have anybody black in the audience? Except your 1 or 2 people that you hired.
It was it showed something. That said, I'd still would vote for Mayor Pete over Donald Trump in a heartbeat.
Anytime.
Sorry about that, Henry Davis. Henry Davis, a frequent guest on the show. He's a councilman in South Bend and very critical of.
Well, I was a reporter in South Bend for 2 years.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I was on WSBT.
Back in the day.
That's when I started on Channel 22.
I did not know that.
Yes.
All right. And so are you, before we completely leave the presidential race, I got to ask you a Joe Biden question. Joe Biden remains very popular among black voters and polls. And I understand polls can dissipate. They go day to day, et cetera, and so forth. Help me understand that, the popularity that Joe Biden has.
Well, I really think it's about familiarity more than anything. I mean, and that's where a lot of Hillary's support came from, was because people knew her. But they knew her in a different way. I mean, for Biden, it's because he's been around a long time. Well, I was a reporter in South. And so since he's been around a long time, they know him. Plus, he was Barack Obama's vice president. And so he comes in with a distinct advantage over everybody else. Now, as you said, as the field narrows and there are fewer people and you begin to make more of a distinction between the candidates and they begin to break out, you might see a change. It may be that the black community sticks with him all the way to the end because they know him and they trust him, that he'll do the right thing. But the bottom line is, it really is about who has the best plan for the black community in terms of how to distinguish yourself in this race.
And who's your sense who has the best plan right now?
Well, I think everybody's still figuring it out. I mean, we're hearing some plans. I've heard Kamala Harris, of course. I think, of course, she inherently has a plan, Cory Booker, and I think Elizabeth Warren. And so, and Joe Biden. If I was going to say my top 4, those would be my top 4.
Did I hear Bernie Sanders on that list?
No, you didn't.
Okay. Some people
who has no history with the Black community.
I was just about to say before you interrupted me there, Delmarie, some people have not completely gotten over the 2016 presidential election. We'll leave it at that. Delmarie Cobb, we're going to take a brief break, and then we're going to switch things to local. Love to get your thoughts on Lori Lightfoot, how she's doing after 100 days, and also her budget speech. Excuse me, it's not a budget speech, her State of the City speech yesterday. So we'll be right back with the great Delmarie Cobb after this.
Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. Get to know your city on one of Chicago Architecture Center's 65 walking tours. Hear the unforgettable secrets and stories behind Chicago architecture from our expert docents. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm actually on a tour right now.
Oh, wow, look at that building.
Get a special discount for Illinois residents from July 15th to August 15th. All Illinois residents get 50% off select walking tours. Visit architecture.org/IL-resident.
Today's Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you in part by Green Element Resale. It's located at 6241 North Broadway in Chicago, and people, it is amazing. Just listen to these items they have. Antiques, furniture, chairs, appliances, lamps, books. In fact, I'm looking at some of the books they have right now at Green Element Resale. Listen to this. Alien Identities. Whoa. That sounds like something Ben may read. Alien Identities. We got a Tom Wolfe book, The Right Stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you know that one?
Oh, yeah. It's about the astronauts.
It's about the astronauts.
Right
and Alien Identity. Guys, get both of them. Get a outer space combo at Green Element Resale. They have books. I'm looking at entertainment centers right now. Tons of stuff at this Green Element Resale, 6241 North Broadway. And find more information at greenelementresale.com. And hey, if you're ever on Broadway between Granville and Devon, stop into Green Element Resale and tell them thank you, because they're the only thrift shop that supports the Ben Joravsky Show. It's Green Element Resale. Go there and save tons, and I mean tons, of money. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Ben, take us to the weekend.
Will do. Delmarie Cobb is our guest. And Dee, before we go back to Delmarie, you got some updates about the speech?
I absolutely do. We went to the Ben Joravsky Show Facebook page to ask all of you your thoughts on last night's State of the City address, not a budget address, from Lori Lightfoot. I have your comments right here. And like I said, we're going to go ahead and read your comments. First up, we will do, okay, well, that's a curse word. We're not going to read Tim's comment. Watch your mouth, Tim. Ann weighed in. Ann says, too little, too late for this person after seeing this speech. Ann says, I'm moving to a southern state. The overall taxes and fees in Chicago increases in everything, but a pension forced me out of Illinois, says Ann. Robin weighed in, says the elephant in the room remains the TIF fund and the outrageous vote to fund Lincoln Yards. We should sue the aldermen who voted to fund for its malfeasance. Our good friend Babbers weighed in. He has a very detailed thoughts on the State of the City address. Bab puts, we know our corporate Democratic mayors, Daley and Rahm, said hard choices meant giveaways to business and financial institutions, therefore leaving the middle and lower classes to fill deficits. Do, quote, progressive mayors know the real meaning of hard choices is sticking the bill to business and upper income bracket individuals? After all, the 28-year corporate Democratic experiment has been an abject failure. A progressive mayor should stop making easy choices, gouging the middle and lower classes, and actually make hard choices as promised. Get that revenue from Ken Griffin, the Ricketts, Sterling Bay, Boeing, Uber, Lyft, LaSalle Street, etc.
It's my man. Speaking of my heart.
More comments here. John weighed in, put 800 long. We're going to have to smoke a lot of pot once it's legal and taxed, I mean.
That's hilarious. A lot of marijuana we've consumed to pay off those obligations.
Andrew says, not many details on what is to be done. People got all dressed up for nothing.
I got an interesting point there.
Mark says, all we can do is wait and see. Let's see here. Beto. No, not Beto O'Rourke, just regular Beto. Beto put straight shooter on who was to blame. Ramen Daily. And I think we have one more comment to read. Actually, no, we don't. Thank you for those comments, everybody. Keep them coming at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show.
Love those comments. Let's get some from Delmarie Cobb now. What's your general impression of the speech?
Well, I mean, sort of what your other listeners are saying. The bottom line is when you look at where we've spent money, we would have the money for the deficit. I mean, we've spent $1 billion in police misconduct and police abuse. That's the $800 million. We spent $1.3 billion for the Lincoln Yards and Project 78. That's your $800 million.
Actually, $1.3 billion for Lincoln Yards, 1.1 for 78 is committed, so it's $2.4 billion together.
Exactly.
Just to point that out.
Exactly. And you saw the article last week about why they rushed for the vote.
Yeah.
They rushed for the vote because soon they weren't going to meet the qualifications to receive a TIF subsidy. And again, if you use the theory of without a TIF, there would be no Lincoln Yards or there would be no Project 78, then there wouldn't have been a TIF because we know that both Lincoln Yards and Project 78 could have been built on their own by the developer, and the money that would have come out would help us to reduce this debt, but instead we've got 23 years of keeping this property at the same value it is now, and that is absolutely ridiculous. And that is the first thing that this mayor did.
Yes, she did, and I just wrote a column chastising her for that. Well, actually, just to correct it briefly, when that vote went down, those two TIF deal votes went down, Delmarie, that was the last act of the Chicago City Council under Mayor Rahm's regime. It was a mayor-elect Lori Lightfoot at the time, and she had campaigned on in opposition to both TIFs, particularly Lincoln Yards, and she sort of looked the other way and allowed the vote to happen. And so she kind of wanted the best of both worlds.
Well, it was politics.
Explain that.
Well, if you're going to lose anyway, you want to put a good face on it. And so, in essence, the vote was going to happen. And so at least let me put my spin on it if the vote is going to take place anyway before I get in office. And that way I can save face and make it look as though I really did something to save it. I would have just... if that was my first act, I just would have jumped and screamed and hollered and yelled and laid out on the floor and stopped everything.
I agree. I do not believe, and feel free to vigorously disagree with me if you want to, Delmarie, I do not believe that if Lori Lightfoot, Mayor-elect Lori Lightfoot, who had just been the recipient of 75% of the vote, had declared to the world on the eve of that vote, if she had declared to the world, you just elected me mayor of the city of Chicago, I do not know what stresses and strains these two TIFs are going to put on our budget. And so therefore, I am asking the Chicago City Council to hold off on this vote until I can have my people take a look at the impact that these TIFs would have on the budget. I do not believe, had she forcefully declared that the city council would have voted against her. I do not believe that. And I know there are some people in the Lori Lightfoot camp who tell me, Ben, no, you're wrong. The city council, even if she had made that firm declaration, would have voted for those TIFs against her. I don't believe that. But having said that, I still would have. If you're going to lose, you're going to lose standing up for the right thing. What do you think?
Well, you're not. You're the mayor-elect. So you got 4 years. So what if you lose? Just go out doing the right thing. Just say, this is what I'm going to do. And the other part about that would have put the aldermen on notice. Instead of standing up there on Inauguration Day, putting them on notice about automatic prerogative, I would have been putting them on notice about $2.4 billion that we're giving to private developers to become richer than they already are.
That is fair enough. It's well put. I hadn't thought about that one. You're right. You got to put them on notice on inauguration day. Really put them on notice, and then they have to live with that and make it clear to the people of the city of Chicago that that's a tax hike. So those aldermen, you want to wear the mantle for that tax hike, you're going to have that tax hike. So my general thought of the speech, it was more or less, I called it a punt. In other words, she was putting off until October, revealing whatever taxes, fines, fees, and cuts she had. Do you agree with me on that?
No, I absolutely agree. It was really what we already know. We may not know exactly how the money broke out, but we know that there was a deficit. We already know that. We know that the previous mayor or mayors have not taken care of the budget. So this was her making an announcement to sort of put in place what might follow in terms of bad news. This is the bad news that may follow unless I get certain things. But the bottom line is, to put all your stock in a casino, to put all your stock in marijuana. I mean, there are progressive, and you've heard me go on and on, there are progressive ways to raise money. I mean, one of the things that David Moore talked about when he became alderman.
17th Ward Alderman, David Moore.
17th Ward Alderman. He became alderman in 2015. And he's an accountant. And so one of the first things he talked about when he became alderman was, since Rahm Emanuel was bragging about we have 55 million new visitors to Chicago, David said, well, then let's add $1 to $2 fee to hotels. So not per night, but per stay. And by now, we would have about $500 million if we had done that when he proposed it for his first budget as alderman. That's just one. These are the things that are rejected. So the things that are rejected are the things that don't hurt everyday people, because we want to make sure we don't hurt the tourists.
Well, let's talk about that before we get into the casino issue, because I know I really want to address the casino issue with you. We've talked about it in the past, but when the city rejects a suggestion like the one that Alderman David Moore made, what interests do you think are being served?
The corporate interests, as your listener said on the Facebook page, the corporate interests. I'm not going to put a levy on my friends who own hotels because I don't want to hurt them. Like somebody won't stay who's coming to Chicago for $2 a stay, not a night, a stay.
Yeah, it's the corporate interest. That's exactly correct. Do you have the clip of the casino part where Lori talked about casinos? Because I want to play that for Delmarie and get her have a discussion of the casino issue.
Absolutely, I do. Let's go ahead and hear that.
We are pursuing a Chicago casino that creates a dedicated revenue stream to pay for our pension costs. If we get the tax structure right, this will represent a structural solution to address long-term problems, not a one-time fix. Not only that, it will also create thousands of jobs, help fund the state's capital plan, and stop the flow of over $200 million in gaming revenue to Indiana. As an independent study made clear, Chicago and Springfield will need to work together to get the tax structure right in order to move this plan forward. Getting it right represents a win for both the city and our state, and there's no reason why we can't arrive at a solution. But we have to be honest with ourselves. If such an agreement isn't made, if we don't secure this casino and the revenue that it creates, we will then be forced to make painful choices on finding other revenue sources. And we all know what those are, the sources we desperately wish to avoid.
Okay, my read of that, Delmarie, and I've been around a while, my read of that is that what Lori is saying in so many words, Mayor Lightfoot, I should say, what Mayor Lightfoot is saying in so many words is that if the state doesn't change the law governing the casino that comes to Chicago said it's more favorable to a casino operator, we won't get a casino, and as a result, we won't get the money we need to pay our bills. And as a result, we're either going to have to do layoffs or we're going to have to raise other taxes. So my read of that, and I'm reading between the lines, is that she's asking essentially for the law to be changed to be more advantageous to a casino operator. Am I misreading that in your opinion?
Well, for me, it's really about regressive versus progressive. And this is not the way to raise money for the city of Chicago. It does nothing but hurt the people who need the help the most, because it is those communities that have the least that are always hedging their bets against the big payday. And to show you how this corporate mentality, and I'm not saying her necessarily, but just how prevalent it is, for Rahm Emanuel, as he was leaving, to say, well, we can't put it near downtown and we can't put it near McCormick Place because when people come here to do business, we don't want them to be distracted. Now, we don't give a damn if you all lose lose every penny you have, those of you who live here. Yeah. But we do not want the business people to be distracted because we want to make sure they come back and do more business. Yeah. Just that kind of mentality, it shows you that these people don't care anything about the people who live here. We are carrying the bills for everybody else who comes to visit, who will never go to the neighborhoods and have no idea what the neighborhoods look like. All they know is Chicago is a beautiful place.
I hear what you're saying, and that contradiction, and and that notion that somehow or other the casino might get in the way of a businessman going to to a convention. I'm like, huh? What's Vegas all about? So I get the feeling that I've always felt that the casinos are a regressive form of taxation, and the city should not be dependent on a casino. And I know you've been a big champion of the South Suburban Airport, which has been talked about since the 90s. I don't know if there's any possibility that it'll ever be implemented soon. What impact
we're closer.
You think we're closer?
We keep getting closer.
All right, what impact do you think, let's say there was a South Suburban Airport, how would that help the city of Chicago?
Well, it helps the city of Chicago because it creates revenue. It creates revenue when people in the city of Chicago have jobs, when they stay here instead of leave, when they invest in their homes, when they pay sales taxes, when they pay property taxes, when they buy big ticket items. All of those things help the city of Chicago. Mm-hmm. So if you don't do those things and you continue to do regressive forms of revenue, all you're doing is encouraging people to leave. And again, this is just simple math. I'm not a mathematic genius by any means, but simple math is, and the people who are paying the bills continues to decrease, then the people who are here have to pay more to cover the bills that continue to increase. That is simple math. So what would we do instead of that? We try to keep the people who are here, to keep them to stay, get them to stay, and we try to entice more people to come. Mm-hmm. But instead, we're driving jobs away. For instance, and it has to do with the South Suburban Airport. So Amazon has 5 fulfillment centers in Will County, in the south suburbs. So instead of, and these are, thousands of people are working these jobs and they're making good money. And I hear from people who have taken tours of the fulfillment centers, there's a good number of African Americans working at the fulfillment centers. But what does Amazon do? Because of Midway and O'Hare are at capacity, they just broke ground in Cincinnati for an airport where they can fly 100 new planes that they're buying out of Cincinnati as a hub. Now, you got 5 fulfillment centers in the south suburbs. Imagine if you had that airport. Where would you be flying the planes out of? Would you be going to Cincinnati or would you be going to Chicago? Who doesn't want to be in Chicago? And so instead, we've lost UPS to Louisville. They had a hub. We lost FedEx to Indianapolis when they opened their hub. We lost Delta to Cincinnati when they opened their hub because there was no place at O'Hare. So these are jobs we've actually lost because we're so entrenched at looking at craziness instead of looking at something that's actually going to be meaningful and provide jobs. How do you sit here and talk about we need something that deals with better education and better jobs, but never talk about the South Suburban Airport, which addresses both of those?
Well, the reality is that every mayor the city of Chicago has had since this has been an idea has been opposed to the South Suburban Airport. I can't recall ever hearing Mayor Lori Lightfoot address the issue, but my presumption would be that she too would be against. I could be wrong.
She's addressed it, but she says the same talking points that everybody else says, and that is, well, as long as it doesn't hurt Midway.
Yeah, okay. And so when you say that we're a little further ahead toward that goal, what do you mean by that?
Well, 90% of the FAA approvals are complete. 90% of the land acquisition is complete. And then Governor Pritzker just appropriated $162 million for infrastructure improvements around the South Suburban Airport site. And so that really has taken us very, very close because we have an existing airport out there, Bolt Field. And so it's not about building a new one, it's about expanding an existing one.
Yeah. By the way, every time you come on the show and talk about this, I just want to let you know, people tell me, I heard that lady on your show talking about that South Suburban Airport. So my guess is that'll never happen in my lifetime, but there's more support out there for Delmarie than a lot of people realize, and that's what
Ben, I'm determined it's going to happen in my lifetime.
Okay, well, I hope you live a long lifetime. So, all right, now, the final thing I want to talk with you about before we break for the day is something you alluded to early, and that is you said, when we think about all the police brutality settlements over the last 10 or 15 years or so, that equals the deficit. That I think it's like $800 million to $1 billion in settlements. What do you think that Mayor Lori Lightfoot should do to what do I say? Make it less likely that these kinds of suits will come out in the future, that we'll have better relations between police and the community? What do you think are some progressive steps she can take right now?
Well, I think that's, we have to make it a priority, and that we have to make sure that moving forward, these kinds of police misconduct and wrongdoing does not continue to happen. So that's the first thing. And part of what's missing, which should be also one of the first things she does when she's hopefully in her budget, will be the civilian police monitor, which is that one piece that is what the Justice Department said needed to happen. And until we get this civilian police monitor ordinance passed so that we have people in the community monitoring the police, there's a consent decree in effect, but it's like, racism. You may change the laws, but you don't change people's hearts. And so the police may have a consent decree, but those who are going to do wrong are still going to do wrong because their hearts haven't changed. And so we have to make sure that we put the things in place to ensure that we do not continue to pay these kinds of outrageous amounts of money for police misconduct, these rogue police. And also the idea that people have said, well, then let the police get insurance so that they, malpractice insurance, so that they become responsible for their conduct. But whatever we have to do, we have to be creative because this cannot continue. Since 2004, we've paid almost $1 billion. I
have not heard that one about the police get the insurance.
Yes, I've had people talk about that, and it makes sense. I mean, that's what doctors do. And they're like, if they're going to be rogue police, then let them get insurance so that it comes out of the insurance money instead of coming out of the city.
So who would pay for the insurance? The individual police officer?
Yes.
You know, I have to think about that one all weekend. I have not heard of that one. I've heard everything, but I've not heard that one. An individual police officer would buy a policy then to protect him or herself in the event that he or she was found. Oh my God, that would cost a lot of money.
Well, we can see, or the police department would do it. But however it's done, it would have to be done in a way where it protects the taxpayers.
Okay, now let's think about this. I'm just following this out. If the police department did it, it still would be the taxpayers ultimately be paying for it. But your argument would be that a premium on such a policy would be less than the payout.
Exactly.
Over the course of
and there have been many people who have talked about it. I mean, I've heard a lot of people talking about it, and I think, maybe that is a last resort, because we've got to do something to make sure that this does not continue to happen.
Well, I can tell you this right now. If it was Mayor Delmarie Cobb, 1, the Lincoln Yard TIF would not exist. 2, all the money that was dedicated for the Lincoln Yard TIF and TIF 78 would go to pay off the budget. And 3, the police department would have insurance policies. Mayor Delmarie Cobb.
Give Cobb the job.
Yeah.
Hey, we got my slogan.
Yeah, there you go. That's better than anything Jesse Jackson ever came up with. It rhymes and everything. Delmarie Cobb is my guest. Is there anything you want people to know about Delmarie? Anything you're up to? Any events you got going on before we break? Anything you want to talk about?
No, I don't have anything going on. It's just that we all know how important the census is. We all know how important the upcoming election is, and that we have to make sure that we get as many people registered to vote as possible, and people need to be counted, because that, again, is how money is appropriated for the city and state.
All right, very good. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Delmarie Cobb, good friend of the Ben Joravsky Show, political strategist. Have her on. I'm going to bring her back, if she will agree to it, after the next round of debates. Get your thoughts. The field will be down to 10. I think it is. I believe at 10. It'll be one night debate only, so we'll get to see Biden on stage with Sanders and Warren, and it'll be very...
should be interesting.
It should be very interesting. Things are getting real exciting. Thank you so much, Delmarie Cobb. Also want to thank Terry Cosgrove. He did an outstanding job, and Rummana Hussain began the show. And, of course, the man, the myth, the legend, the pride of joy at Alton, Illinois, behind the board, Dr. D. You worked double time today.
Several hats today.
Many, many hats. Got here at 7 in the morning to cut up Lori Lightfoot's speech. You did a great job. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. Have a great weekend, everybody.
And remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows and Benny J bonus interviews at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, chicago.suntimes.com/pages/Joravsky, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you download your favorite podcasts. Downloaders, we live stream this program Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time. Once again, both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites. We Facebook live stream as well, and the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel. Find us on Facebook at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show. That's also on Twitter, and the Ben Joravsky Show on Instagram, JORA, V as in victory, SKY. Enjoy your weekend. We'll see you Tuesday.
Yes, that's billion with a B.